you for your time and support. Okay, with that out of the way, let's introduce our first panelist and dive right into the first segment on establishing a rules philosophy. And once again, we have Dean. He was so awesome the first time that we decided to let him come back again up at like what, 4 a.m. or whatever nonsense it is out there across the pond. Welcome back. Who are you? What content do you create? And what is your tabletop RPG experience?
Okay, I'm Dean. I'm the creator of a game called Untold Destiny, which is we're about to go live with our adventure. But I have 39 years of roleplay experience behind me, starting with basic D&D, Tunnels and Trolls, fighting fantasy as solo, going all the way through things like Shadowrun, Earthdawn, Torg, Star Wars, the D6 system, Pathfinder, all the way up to things like Palladium back in the day. And Rifts. I forgot Rifts.
He's
last
saying
time.
all my buzzwords right now. I love it.
So I have experienced a whole raft of games, and I love this hobby so much. So 39 years of experience going into the creation of games and just talking to people about their creations as well. I love the indie market that we have.
And in one more year, you get to have the 40 years.
Oh, I do. Looking forward to it.
All right. Well, so let's kick this off. So, Dean, how do you decide when to enforce rules strictly, when to bend them, and when to make a ruling on the fly?
Okay. Very good questions. And I tend to strict rules are are placed on anything that becomes routine in the game. For my behalf. So, for example, if there are rules on how to use skills and they're within the book, all the routine stuff, just go to the book, and I expect my players to kind of know what they're doing, what they're rolling, to just take a bit of the load off me. So a player would go, I'd like to do this, and according to the skill, I need a DC of this, so off you go. So all the routine stuff should just be rules as written. I will tend to bend the rules when things are a little bit unusual. So this is things like, we're doing something as standard, but there's an environmental factor or something has come in, or there is a situation, or the players are trying to do it differently. So, for example, we would like to do mountaineering, and it's using athletics, and athletics requires a lot of strength. However, we're not a strong party, so we want to do things and engineer things so that we use dexterity more than strength. And at that point, I'd be like, okay, give me how you're doing that. And if it's reasonable, I say, yeah, okay, you can use your dexterity, not your strength. And I consider that bending the rules, and being flexible in response to what the players are doing, their imagination, and how they're tackling a problem. When it comes to rules on the fly, there's 2 instances that I would look at doing that. The first one is if the players are doing something and I know there's a rule, but I don't know where it's buried because we don't use it that often, and I don't want to slow the game down. There's momentum. And then I'll just make a rule on the fly. And it's simple. If I will then check it afterwards. If it's wrong, I'll apologize to the players and say I'll get it better next time. If it's right, then I'm like, yes, brilliant. But the players tend to be quite accepting of that because the momentum of the game has to be maintained. The other time I'll do rules on the fly is when something unusual happens, or combat takes a slight turn, and I think actually something like this happening would be good. There's no set rule for it, so we're going to adjudicate it this way. And often that's done with the players absolutely loving it. The combat takes a different turn. The players have something unexpected happen. And that's when I do rules on the fly, when I need that unexpected thing that the rules don't cover, or where the rules no longer apply because something very unusual is happening. So those are kind of top level when I would do the 3 things. I think I covered them, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
That was very thorough, Dean. I am impressed. I guess a couple things that I would add is, if I'm trying to enforce a rule strictly, but I don't have the confidence that I recognize the rule, or I remember the rule completely. If there's any part of me that's like, oh, I don't know if I know it completely, and then I'll move on to, okay, what does does the game system have a precedent for it, right? In different game systems, there's like, DC, there's difficulty grades and things like that. And then I guess more for like the making up a rule or bending a rule is, does that rule and the way it was written accurately model the current situation, or is this an edge case, right? I think that's the most when you're like, oh, us as a GM, we need to bend the rules or even make something up completely. That's when it's like you need to jump in and say, okay, from my system mastery, how are we going to do this, right? But I don't really like to talk about the rules kind of in the forefront. I'll just call for something in the moment. I like playing BRP games, so I'll call for a skill that maybe isn't normally the skill you would use them, but from how the player described what they were doing, that's the skill that makes the most sense.
Real quickly, would you say BRP for some folks out there?
Sorry,
You're talking basic role playing by Chaosium, right?
Basic role playing. I like Mithras, but that's where it came from.
Sure. Okay.
First of all, Dean, your answer is it is the only evidence we need as to the fact that high prep is good. That was very succinct. And I'll have to echo both Dean's and Austin's advice there, or perspective rather, which is that if you have it written down, to me, the whole point, the guiding star by which you decide, whether to make a rule or ruling, etc., is consistency. The whole point of having a rule, having a lever, having mechanics, is so that the players can effectively solve a problem with it. If the lever, if the mechanics, if the rules are wishy-washy, there is no solving. There's no satisfactory solving of X situation. So you have to be consistent. The easiest way to make it consistent is to have it pre-made. And so if there's any sort of rule that's actually there and we all agree on it and we're using it, then we're going to use that rule. The only thing is, due to human frailty of mind, sometimes we forget it, and that's where the arbiter is invested with the ability to just make a ruling on the fly. But if you do that, especially if you do it a lot, you should treat that ruling on the fly as the new rule. Because again, consistency. If you have one player where you're like, I don't remember the rule, I'll do this ruling, and then he, maybe use dexterity to jump the cliff. And then the next player, it's like, oh, wait, I remember the rule, you have to use strength. It's like, come on, dude, really? Right? So whatever ruling you make, that needs to be treated as the new rule, in the same way that we have in law, where, you have a law on the books, right? But then the judges also make a ruling, and that sets precedent, and that is now case law. You have your written law and your case law, and your case law has to be consistent with itself, when the written law is lacking. But again, I advocate high system mastery to the point of automaticity, where everyone knows exactly what all the rules do all the time because they've just played it so much. Like people who've been driving a car forever, you don't have to think about it, you just do it, right? That's automaticity. You automatically have mastery.
He's not from Alabama.
Yeah, no. So anyway, that's my thing. It's like this is preferred. This is what you do if you have to make a ruling. But really, if you have the same group playing the same system for 10 years, this isn't even going to be an issue because everyone knows the rules like the back of their hand. They've already memorized all the rulings, and it's just how you play. There's a gradient to actually getting good at RPGs, or so-called RPGs. There's a gradient of actually getting good at it that I hardly hear anyone talk about. That yes, you're supposed to get better at it as you go. And it seems that all the advice we have is always just talking about beginners. And we never actually say, by the way, after playing 10 or 20 years, you might not have these issues at all, and now we have a totally separate set of issues to talk about. Anyway, that's a side tangent.
I wanted to ask you, Dean, you said deciding to enforce something strictly is when something is a routine. Having that as like a background, how would you decide when, okay, no, even though this is a routine thing, we need to do this differently?
That's a good question, and it comes down to the system you're playing. So if I can give an example, I do apologize. This is Lily.
This is the best part of the stream.
I know. I just need to move back a bit. She's going to jump. Go on, Lily. She goes on to the bookcase. Go on. There we go. If I can use an example, when I was running 3.5, so I'd moved from second edition to 3.5. Second edition had a lot more structure around rules adjudication than first. First was very much, you got your attributes, And if you want to do something, the DM decides and adjudicates a percentage chance of success or whatever a mechanic. Second edition brought in proficiencies, which provided a bit more structure around how you could do things in the game. And then 3.5, well, third came along before 3.5, and that brought in rules for pretty much everything. Every skill had a list of DCs, had a list of modifiers, had everything was absolutely detailed. And when I first started running third, the amount of time we would spend mid-game just going through the rules to try and understand how something was done became tedious. And it wasn't until I started to get confident, and when I started to get that a lot more confident, I then started to get a little bit looser on the modifiers, because I knew a kind of general idea of what that number was, but I didn't want to stop and have to go back to the book each time someone used a skill. So it was with experience and confidence that I began to go down to the more sort of loosey, you're trying to do something. Yeah, I know the book probably says it's a +8 modifier, but you know what? It's +6. Off you go. And the players didn't challenge me on that because it just felt fair. It felt like that was part of it. It kept the momentum of the game. But for a lot of the stuff we used time and time again, we knew the modifiers off by heart. So that became very routine, and we used the rules as written. So I think I've answered your question, which is I would deviate from the rules, typically to save time, instead of going back to the book to double check you've got the right numbers. And it depending on the system. So fifth came along, and fifth had less guidance when it came to the numbers and more of a guideline, which is easy task, hard, normal task, difficult task, and so forth. And that left it very much for you to decide how you were going to adjudicate someone doing something. And it did lead to one fairly new DM actually adjudicating a high DC for jumping over a ledge. And it was quite comical as we all failed to just literally get a leg over this edge. And it was, and I turned around to him afterwards and said, look, sometimes you don't need a check. You know, if something's so routine, just say we leap over and it's done.
Good advice.
Only when there's a chance of failure.
If there's a chance of failure and there's a consequence to the failure. If there's no consequence to the failure, why are you rolling dice? You succeed, even if it just takes a bit more time. Did that answer your question?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, I wasn't sure if Archmaster had anything he wanted to say, but I do have a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
So you said that if it was something routine, then you would just go ahead and, you have the modifiers. If you ever change the modifier, would you just change it and then continue on? Or would you just like slip in a little, because of this is the modifier?
It would be, if I changed the modifier, it would be because of this. And then we'd go back to, so say for example, I did a kind of a quick, I think it's this, let's go. And then we checked after the game had finished and found actually I was wrong. Then going forward, we'd use the correct one. But for the game, people accepted that's the modifier that was used just to keep the game flowing. There are times, though, to caveat that, where sometimes the rule we're using, so say we do something obscure, we go to the rules, and the rules don't seem to fit the style or what we anticipated, and we make a change then. I always have a house rule document that I keep for every system I've run. And where we have a consistent change, so we've agreed around the table that we don't like how the book's written and we want it done differently, it goes into the house rule book, becomes canon to our version of the game, and we then use that going forward.
Nice. That's actually something I was going to talk about when Arch was talking about the rules. And he was talking about consistency, like once you make a ruling, that carries forward. I think the biggest need for consistency is session to session. If you make a ruling in one session, you need to make sure you carry that through at least to the end of the session. And then once you get to the end of that, you can go back, look in the book. Maybe there's not a rule for it. Maybe there is. If there is, obviously, if it's a good rule, keep it. But if you end up, like you were saying, Dean, house brewing it over and over, home brewing it over and over, then just keep that, make that in the homebrew document. And in homebrew documents, I would say, I'm not going to homebrew something in the middle of a session. I think that's not a great idea. Mainly because, like, the players, they learn the rules, and then you're going to just mix it up on them in the middle of it. That's not fair to them. Even though, you may have like, oh, this is the greatest idea ever. And it might be, but maybe wait until after the session and talk to them. Hey guys, I had this great idea, and everyone might clap and be like, "Oh, that's the best idea ever. I wish we used it already." But
Yeah,
wait until after the session. Don't. What's the saying? Don't switch boats in the middle of the stream. I don't know.
That sounds like a good saying, regardless. Yeah, I agree also with the what you said earlier, Dean, about making, like, bending the rule when it's an odd situation, when it's a fringe case. That's when the rule applies to standard stuff. When it is a non-standard situation, you use a non-standard ruling. That's perfect. That's exactly what rulings are for, because the rulebook cannot possibly cover everything. And if it did, it wouldn't be functional as a rulebook. So that's why these games require an arbiter, a referee, a GM, etc. I completely agree. But the whole point of consistency is essentially everyone needs to agree upon it beforehand, right? If everyone agrees, again, I think it shouldn't be done in the middle of the session because you're wasting precious session time. But if everyone agrees to what the rule is, you can have the rule be whatever you want it to be. But as long as everyone agrees and they know beforehand, and then it's predictable going forward. The whole point of consistency is actually predictability. I have to know, okay, with my strength score, I have about an X% chance to jump over that ledge, right? I have to know that before I commit to jumping. I have to know it beforehand. It has to be predictable. That is the entire, like, every other advice about consistency and blah blah blah. All of that really serves the purpose of predictability, because that is the player's only lever by which to solve problems. Is that I can predict. I have this modifier. I have X% chance to succeed on X task.
Yeah, I think you've hit on something there, which is a lot of the changes we saw in D&D, going from a very loose system to something that was incredibly rigid, like 3.5, was to give the players the ability to know what they could or could not do. And in some respects, I quite like it, because if I'm faced with a problem, I'm not going to take my weakest aspect to try and solve that problem. I'm going to take my strength to solve that problem. If a player's looking at a problem in game and they're going, "Oh, I'm a strong character, so I think I can climb this," and for whatever reasons the DM says, "Oh, actually it's a dexterity check," and you go, "Well, my dexterity is rubbish. I wouldn't do this in the first place if I'd known." And it's to solve that. If I'd known, what are the rules? How can I tackle a problem and play to the strengths of my characters? My character. Now, it's my personal thing. I think 3.5 went too much the other way, and the amount of arguments we ended up at times around the table where a player would say, "The rule says this," and I would say, "Well, no, I don't care what the rule says. This happens." And one of the areas was diplomacy. I had a player who pumped charisma, and then they went by the diplomacy DCs, and they would have someone hostile in front of them who they've harmed or done harm to, and they would say, "Look, I've got a roll of 35. They have to become peaceful with me." And I'd be like, "I don't care what the rule says. You've hurt them. You've done harm to them. They consider you an enemy, and there's nothing you can do that will break that." And that's where I think the rules, when they're too rigid, when there's too much information in the rules, you end up in that difficult situation.
Right. They have the right idea, the right goal. They said, we want to give players consistent levers that they can pull so they can solve problems. And then they said, well, let's do that by adding a DC to everything. It's like, no, that's a good aim but a bad execution. You need to find a middle ground there where I think the GM really is the magic that makes this format of game work, where you say, yes, you can have consistent levers, but they are adjudicated by the GM. Hey, GM, you need to be 100% as fair and consistent as possible. That, as long as you have a good guidance on the GM and the GM is following that guidance, you get the best of both worlds.
It leads me to something I actually wanted to bring up, is to establish a good rules philosophy, you need to be playing a robust system that everyone maybe not completely understands, but it's intuitive to them. Because if you're playing a system that maybe it's too rules light, and you have people that it just doesn't jive with it, they want more, I guess, meat on the bones, and they can't make any decisions because they don't know what the GM's what they're going to ask for, then that's not going to be good. And same way going the other way, too rules heavy, you have people like you were talking about, Dean, the players like, well, the book says this. And then I would say to them, well, you missed the part in the book where the players shouldn't be just rolling willy-nilly. I need to ask for the roll.
Yeah.
But I will preach to the cows come home about percentile dice. I love percentile dice. But any dice system is just fancy ways to do percentages. Some people love the rolling a whole bunch of dice for a dice pool. Yeah, Max likes that. Some people they don't even have physical dice. They don't get the joy out of that. But having a robust system that everyone is intuitively kind of aware of what it's going for, because if you have someone who's playing D&D 5th edition and they're wanting, oh, I want the grittiest game ever, I want everyone to be worried for their soul from every second they sit at the table.
Why do you keep talking about me?
Stop it! Play a different game, Max. No, he does play a different game. But yeah, there is a time when I'm not going to say, no, I will say there are some bad systems, but some people, they have a system that they like, oh, this game is trash, but they were just trying to make it do something that it wasn't designed to do, right? And so make sure that's a good starting point. It's like, hey, maybe we should make sure we have the right system first.
Oh, definitely.
I'm going to jump in here for a moment because I'm so happy you said that. I will be a complete defender of somebody who, like me, grew up poor or wants to try something different, and you only own one system. For us, obviously it was D&D to get started, and you want to try to ham-fist some science fiction in there. You want to ham-fist a Cthulhu mechanic or something like that. I will be the first person to say, you can do it. You'll have to do some work, but you can do it. But for the love of God, when possible, please find the right system for you. Instead of complaining that, oh, D&D sucks, or oh, Palladium sucks, or oh, Face Rip sucks, or oh, Earth Dawn sucks, or insert your game here, whatever sucks. How about just find the one, this works so much better for me because of what I'm trying to do at the table. So I'll still keep playing game X. You'll play game Y. Everybody's going to be happy. Absolutely. That's a mentality I wish more people would latch on to, is just find the right system for you. Not everything has to be D&D 5e. Traveler. Question, Dean, because it's still your segment. I want to ask you this. I've been kind of chomping at the bit to ask you this one. And there's some comments that are probably asking me to ask this one right now. So we'll start with you. What do you say to people who feel that you should look up a rule to get it right? It's a game after all, and the game aspect has to take precedence.
If you are running a game where the rules are absolutely vital, so I'm thinking games that cover domain play, competitive play, or where you've got multi-parties competing against each other or working together but at different locations and sessions, then the rules really matter. And yes, take the time. Go back to the rules. Make sure you're adjudicating correctly, because it's not just your table. You could be affecting other tables. And in that situation, absolutely. If it is only your table and the players are happy with you kind of playing a little bit looser to keep the momentum going, then I don't think you need to go back to the rules, because after all, it is only a game. And sometimes the moment is more important than the rules, and the players having that moment will be treasured far more than breaking that and going to the rule book. So it really depends how important the rules are for the game. And if they are vital for the reasons I mentioned, go to the rules. If they're not, then my view would be go to the moment and keep the flow of the table going, unless there's a real reason you have to go to the rules.
Man, this whole stream is going to go downhill once it gets after this segment. Dean is just so good at this.
Very good job, Dean. Perfect answer.
Yeah,
really
you hit the. Sorry, go ahead, Arch. I've been talking too much.
It is when you get to competition, when it affects players outside the session, outside this table. That is when you absolutely have to have consistency in rules. And that happens so rarely. I mean, a lot of people might say that's not even really the same type of game. It's like what 90% of us are playing. We don't really play cross-table games. So that being like, well, if you're going to play a different game, a different style altogether, then you have to do, super consistent rulings. But in the style that most of us play, it just doesn't really come up. You don't have to be super, super consistent unless it's like, life or death, boss battle, etc. Then I think some players might actually appreciate, hey, let's take a break. Let's stop the flow and the momentum for a second. Let's make sure that you can actually revive me within 10 feet instead of 5 because I have this cool action I'm going to take as soon as I'm up to kill this boss, right? That might be a time that I would say, you know what? It's actually worth it to suspend the deep immersion and the deep flow in order to raise the tension. Is like, what does this rule say? Is he able to do this? Is this going to work? That to me can be more thrilling than if we just make a ruling and then something happens and we're always wondering in the back of our mind, but what would have happened? Was that legal? Was that the rule? And then if you look up the rule later and it's different, it's like, oh, gee, we didn't do it right? It's sometimes when there's a lot of tension and the high stakes, it's better to just look up the rule.
I think you've hit on something there, Arch, which is when you're facing something which has a permanent consequence to the game and the players are about to lose a character or there's about to be a total party wipe and one player goes, I think I got something that will work, but it needs a rule check, then yes, you're absolutely right. And I have been in games where I've been running the game and the players have their Hail Mary moment. But it requires a strict rule adjudication because I want to be fair and I don't want the party to feel they can just come up with something and win the day. Because if they win, it's because of what they've done in accordance with the rules. And yes, you stop and it might take half an hour, but when the players suddenly realize that the one player had that brilliant plan and the rules supported them, there's cheering around the table. It's exactly. A great moment.
It's about player satisfaction. And sometimes you get more satisfaction from winning that fight than you do from just momentum and more play and just keep on going. But all the play itself is just kind of wishy-washy.
Yeah. If the DM just goes, oh yeah, I'll give it to you. It's a Deus Ex moment. It doesn't feel you've achieved a victory. The DM's allowed you to have a victory. It's
exactly.
Yeah.
I don't want to play Mother May. Hey, can I win? Oh, I can. Thank you. It's like I didn't win then.
Yes. One of the things I like to do is if a player has a really interesting idea and I don't want to look it up or I know, I think you're kind of breaking that envelope. You push that envelope a little far, but dang it, that is so cool. I don't use the term, but I will rule of cool it. But I always say this, that's not how this is supposed to work. But that was a really awesome idea. I love the out of box thinking. So I'm going to let it work this one time. But after this, don't try it again. It's not going to work, but because I want to reward the player for having a really cool idea, as long as it isn't totally game breaking. But I just think in this circumstance, that's a really good way of thinking about this. Okay, let's let it happen once. Don't try it again.
Yeah, I've done that.
So one thing that I wanted to pick at for Arch, and I think you also alluded to this, Dean, just not the same words, is when you were saying if we're playing a different game. So you were talking about war games or games that affect other tables, and I mean maybe something like if someone's playing chess, obviously you cannot be breaking the rules when you're playing chess, right? But in the same way, if you're at a table that you've decided, I want to. The main idea here is I want to role play. I want to pretend that I am this big meaty orc, with a big ol' axe, and that's why I'm there. Their goal is not to win the adventure. If that's not their goal, then pulling out that rule book, no matter how much high the tension is just going to completely deflate that moment. Because in their, the way they get enjoyment from the game is that, oh, well, now I have to wait while these nerds read their book. But if you are playing at a game where, okay, we are, we value the role play, but we still want to win, or maybe that's some people don't like to think about that, but we want to succeed the best we can. We want to make sure there's no fumbles, as it were. I don't want the GM to roll a fumble on their rules check. Then that's the time when, okay, if that's what you've decided at your table, then bring out that rule book. But personally, at my games, like I'm not going to pull out a rule book basically ever, unless it's a beginner game where it's like someone's asked me, hey, I'm learning the game, how does this work? I don't want to give them wrong information, so maybe I'll pull it out then, right?
Yes. I think there's one set of protocols when teaching new players. You can't do fully immersive in-character 4D roleplay when you're teaching new players this system, right? So obviously not. And then, I think it is a small percentage of the time where you pull out a rule book. And it would be preferred, in my opinion, to never pull it out because everyone knows the rules like the back of their hand, right? That's not very practical, but it is the ideal. It is the preferred. So I completely agree.
And I did want to make sure, even in cases of like, character death is happening, the whole party is dying, I wouldn't pull out a rule book. I'm like, this is going to deflate this, in my opinion.
Yeah, it often, if you do pull out the rule book, it's because the players are asking you to pull out the rule book to prove that they can succeed, they can clutch a victory. I'm with you though. The screen, your DM screen, should have everything you need pretty much on it, and if it doesn't, then the system is an incredibly complicated system, so you learn it fast, so you can bring those rules to the table. If you can't learn it fast and you can't reliably regurgitate those rules when you need it, then it might be too complicated a system for you to run. And that's not a bad thing. It just means there's a mismatch between you and the style of game the system of game you want to run. Find a system that suits your style, that you can manage, and it'll go smoothly, and it'll be a good game.
Mm-hmm. Add that to the definition of a robust system.
Yeah,
right.
as I've got older, I've veered from having rules-heavy systems to more flexible systems where it puts a lot more control in my side to make rule calls that don't require me to look up numbers.
It's one of the reasons I love the free league games so much. I think they're that perfect balance between having everything I need to run any type of game I want, but leaving so much open for me to say, I think that's difficult, I think that's challenging, One last follow-up here before we move on to the next segment, and again, Dean's segment, so we'll start with you. How do you keep, and you guys, by the way, all three of you have been kind of dancing on this one. I just kind of like, let's focus in on this one just a touch more. How do you keep on-the-fly rulings from feeling arbitrary to the players, like you just pulled it out of your butt?
I explain my thinking to the player. So I will turn around, if there's an arbitrary ruling, I'll go, well, I think, given these situations, that the ruling should be this. And it does give the player a chance to go, oh, hang on, have you thought about this? And if I haven't thought about it, I'll go, good catch. Yeah, with that in account, I now adjust my ruling to this. It's a dialogue between you and the player, the player being affected. I know that there are some people who think your job is to adjudicate, and if the players go against your word, well, you smack them down. I've never approached it like that. It's a collaboration between me and the players to enjoy ourselves around that table, to create a story together, and that includes adjudication of rules. Because as much as I pretend to be God at the other side of the table, I don't know everything, and there's some stuff that I just forget. And a player will remind me, and I'll go, actually, good catch there. Yeah, the ruling is now this.
Sorry, could you repeat the question, Max?
Sure. How do you keep on-the-fly rulings from feeling arbitrarily? Oh my God, I can't say the word arbitrary to the players.
He fumbled his GM role. No,
right? My English role.
Yeah, one thing that I think and this maybe goes into the next topic a little bit, but is to keep that trust and keeping it from feeling arbitrary is you must base and hopefully you have a good rule system that supports this, but you have to base it in to borrow some terminology from a Powered by the Apocalypse, I know. You have to base it in the fiction. It has to be something that's actually there, because if it's not, then it is arbitrary, right? It might not be something that the characters or the players know about, but it has to be based off the things that are actually there. If I'm like, Tommy's been rolling pretty bad tonight. I'm gonna throw him a bone. Or like, I spent so much time on this boss and they're killing it too quickly. I know there's a lot of D&D advice that says you need to give them more HP or something.
Yeah.
I hate that.
I will argue with you on that one in the
Okay.
members only. No, seriously, bring that up in the
Let's
members
go.
only. I will argue with you on that one because I did that. My players loved it, but we'll talk about that in the members only side.
Oh boy.
But yeah, that was the only thing, is base it off of something that's actually quote unquote tangible in the world, and then it's never arbitrary. It's right there.
Okay.
Yeah, I would largely echo that. There's a reason why so many of our systems, so many of the game systems out there, use strength, dexterity, etc. They use human attributes. We want things to be consistent and therefore predictable, and real life is the one thing that all of us know pretty well. So it's just an easy hack for consistency and predictability to model it after real life. And so in the same way, that's essentially what he said about having it in the fiction. Well, if the fiction is the thing that we're all sharing, then just model it after something in the fiction, make it based in the fiction. So if your system is based in real life and your ruling is based in the fiction, those are two different avenues to give people consistent, predictable ruling. So they'd be like, oh yeah, that does make sense that the rule is like that because that's how it works in real life. Your strength does this and your dexterity does that. Oh yeah, that does make sense of the ruling because my character is hanging onto a cliff with his nose itching, hanging on with one hand in heavy armor. Yeah, I guess that is a DC 20, right? When you can, when you can ground it into fiction. One thing I would personally try to avoid is meta talk. Is like, the GM just talking to the players and telling them, well, this is what I do and whatnot. You can do that, and for newer players, that's more necessary, of course. But my aim is more like, high advanced play, where the goal is to get to the point where the GM just gives a ruling, and you have a high trust table where it's like, you know what? The GM, I trust that the GM has thought about all the different circumstances that's going on. He says DC 20. I'm just going to go with it, right? That improves flow. That improves, the tension, making things go. I would prefer that over explaining it. But again, there is a time and a place to explain it.
All right, we're going to get ready to move on into the next segment here in just a moment. I'm going to make one last follow-up here because these guys have kind of, again, said something similar or close enough. In the last AD&D 2E game I was in when I was still living in Germany, one of the things is I knew the rules better than the game master. So if he came up and said, okay, we're going to do, let's say +4 for that, I'd be like, actually the book says +2. Now if he came back and said, well, I'm telling you it's +4, okay. It's just that one, I would mention it one time, and then whatever ruling that he decided to go with, that's what we went with. Other times he'd be like, oh crap, you're right, that is +2. Okay, it's +2, whatever it happened to be. So I have zero issues in my games if somebody brings something like that up once, because they might be confused. Like, wait a minute, I thought it was supposed to be this. And like you guys were talking about, there's some expectations based around what the rules are. But, if the game master has another thing in mind, if he does it too much, I'll be like, dude, do you know the rules of this game or what are you doing here? But I think that for me, that's a good balance. It's just like, I'll mention it. And if you're still the game master, so if you still say, no, I'm telling you it's +4, there might be things outside of my purview that I don't know. We're all drunk right now and didn't realize it or something. I don't know, but, all right. Well, that was a really good segment one there. So don't forget to like this video, subscribe to all the panelist channels. Your support keeps the conversation going, reach more tabletop RPG fans. We may even be looking for somebody like you. You could be a panelist on the show. Sign up on the Discord, link in the description, read the rules, find a panel topic that interests you, and maybe sign up. Coming up in the next segment, we are going to talk about handling disputes and maintaining momentum. By the way, some of you have already commented on a lot of new guests or new panelists today. Yeah, we have 2 brand new panelists, and Dean was on a whole one time before. So look at this panel, and they're knocking it out of the park so far. So good on them. Now, before we get into the next segment, let us read some of those super chats and starred chats. And right off the bat, Paladin Steve 81 says, "Tell us how it's done, Dean. For $5, you can keep cheering people on." So, Dean, how is it done?
How is it done? Well, it's just done. That's done.
There we go. You're not gonna sleep tonight because you're gonna be like, it's just done. It's just done. I should know what that means. I love it.
No, Paladin Steve's a great supporter, and I really appreciate when he comes into the chat of any show that I'm on and gives me that level of support. He's fantastic.
Well, I appreciate Paladin Steve as well because he gave me $5. There you go. Zarian 13 says, I think the fringe case adjudication aspect is one of the primary responsibilities of the GM, and players need to trust the GM and let them adjudicate as they see fit. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that's why we're not playing a computer game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I do also, just to caveat that, I also think that it's the player's responsibility if they think the GM has forgotten something to remind them, but do it quickly, politely, and if the GM says no, it doesn't apply, then you accept. And the only reason I say that is it's a difficult job behind the screen, especially when you've got a lot of things going on, to keep track of absolutely everything. And sometimes a player helping you out is great.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I don't know if I agree with that, but okay.
Uh-oh. Maybe we have a little debate for the members only side. I like that.
Well, as Malachi in chat just said, if you have an issue with a GM's ruling, save it for after the session to discuss. Don't hold up the game. There's that reason. But then there's also I would push back on the idea that it is the player's responsibility to remind the GM of something they forgot. I wouldn't say that as a responsibility. You could say, well, it's nice to have, but that's really a table per table thing. I, as a GM, might not actually appreciate that, but I really would push back on the idea that it is their responsibility. Hey, players, you need to make sure that if you see the GM making bad ruling, that you tell them.
Yeah, it's not the bad ruling. It's if a player says, hang on, you've forgotten that I've got this ability or I've got this relationship. Mm-hmm. So something the player has control of that the GM might not be aware of or might have forgotten. In that instance, it's nice for the player to say, oh, hang on, don't forget, I have, or I can, or something like that.
With that explanation, I agree. When it is something in the player's purview, like, hey, I have expert proficiency in Dwarvish, that lowers the DC by 5. It's like, oh, right. But if it's like, hey, GM, this is your purview, your thing, you should change it like that. That's where I said the player shouldn't talk about it. If it's their own abilities, absolutely. You should always be communicating your own abilities. I completely agree. I'm glad we clarified.
Yeah. Okay. Then we have Czar James the First. All bow down to James, member for 33 months. That is awesome. I saw you left my Discord, so I didn't know if you were still a member here, but there we go. Thank you. Appreciate that, James. 33 months. What the F am I doing with my life? Well, you know what you're doing? You're learning some great game master, dungeon master, referee advice. Insight.
There you go.
There we go. But thanks, James. I'd always appreciate you. And say hi to Hungar, too. Trapdoor Spider says, keep the rules away from players. They will exploit hard. Let's talk here supports this. Okay, are you guys supporting players' exploitation of the rules?
Some players, definitely.
I would definitely say some players, that's their fun, is they want to exploit the rules the most they can, and they can go do that at someone else's table.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say, who hurt you, Trapdoor? Because that sounds like it's born from experience, where it's like, well, I mean, okay, if that works for you, buddy, I understand. But
I mean, to be fair, I do see his and Trapdoor. Thank you very much for the $10 as well. I do see his point in some degree. It's one of the first things I look at when a player comes up with some idea, and I'm like, whoa, hold up. The first thing I think of is this player trying to pull a fast one on me? And it's because of all the rationalization and justifications of stuff I dealt with. Yes, hurt me many years ago in high school. I talked about some of that either last week or in the members, something where I talked about people literally putting lead in their dice, stuff like that. Like people who are trying to win at RPGs, all right? And then trying to rationalize, like, I get that in your head this makes perfect sense, but it doesn't fit the setting. Maybe it fits Earth, but it doesn't fit Earth, or wherever we happen to be. Like stop. So I get that point where they try to find the exploitations. Now, I try to backtrack a little bit from that and say, okay, wait a minute. Is this just cool? Is this just something that maybe is a little outside the envelope? And this is where I go to the whole thing. You can do it once, but not again. So I just wanted, in his defense, I kind of see where he's coming from with this. It might be worded kind of strongly, but I see where he's could be coming from with this.
Yeah, I think keep the rules book away from the players is just like,
I got you.
really. But no, just a personal anecdote.
Mhm.
I have a player who, I'm designing my own system integrated into the world. It has a whole bunch of really wacky stuff, and she gets so into, wait, hold on, I have soul shards and they're made of Ethereum. How many soul shards can it connect to a core soul shard? And can I have like a larger body? Does the soul shard expand? Can I use this to like XYZ? She goes into all of the mechanics of like what could be possible. And I'm like, you are expanding my mind. I hadn't thought about that. I guess it would work like this. I guess you could do that. Like she is getting into the esoterica of the mechanics. And it's so interesting to see the concepts and characters she comes up with and the goals for her characters. And I'm like, I want like 12 of you to play in like 3 or 4 games a week. You are just awesome. So when you have a really good player that's not exploiting, she is trying to come up with something interesting, something really cool. That gives them all the rules they can handle because they will make your experience and your table so much better for it. It really has to do with players.
That is where a framework game works for me. Because a game that gives me enough information that I can make a ruling from that, but doesn't have to dictate every little step of the way. I like to call them frameworks. That is where, for me, the perfection comes in.
Yeah.
Where Dean makes one ruling, Adept makes
Yeah.
another ruling, and then Arch makes even a third ruling, but they're all, you know what? They all make sense.
It's the classic. There are multiple ways to solve a problem, and if you've got a framework ruling in place that allows players to almost come up with 3 different solutions using 3 different attributes, brilliant. That's really good. But I would say I would prefer players to understand the rules and to have read the rule book. I don't think you keep the rules away from players. Your job's hard enough maintaining, the creatures you got to control and the world
Yes.
that you got to adjudicate. Having to explain to your players what they can and can't do in the game as well is just too much on top. Exploitable players, they're the ones who should be dealt with separately from that.
And the answer isn't keep the rules away from bad players. It's don't play with bad players.
Yeah.
To be fair, not everybody gets much of a choice.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying. And I mean, I think there are 2 sides to that coin. And I think sometimes we use strong. I've never used strong language on the show ever a single time. But sometimes we use strong, or we'll say more matter-of-fact language sometimes that doesn't seem to breed nuance. But I'm pretty sure this Trapdoor Spider there has some nuance built into that. But we do need to move on to the next super chat. Again, thank you for the $10, Trapdoor. Czar James I, not only did he become a member for 33 months, he also decided to tip $10. I don't know what I'm reading because it's always weird when it comes from him. I'm sure it's some song lyrics or some Shakespeare or translated Russian poetry or something, but it says, my Max, don't lie to me. Tell me, where did you sleep last night? In the pines where the sun don't ever shine. I shivered the whole night through. There we go. That was Edgar Allan James right there. So thank you very much, DM James. I appreciate that. And your $10. I'm always happy with and nervous when you're in chat. And Sly Blue Demon, good to see you here. Is a new member, so he can be around for that maybe debate we'll have later, or he'll be one of the people yelling at me for how dare you cheat at the game. We'll see. Was it cheating? Was it?
His profile picture of the cat looking at the ball of yarn and pondering it is great. Pondering the orb.
All right. Well, with that, let's move on to our next segment, which covers handling disputes and maintaining momentum. They may have already touched on this a little bit, but we'll dive a little bit deeper into this. And of course, we're going to meet our second panelist now, Adept Austin. Who are you? What content do you create? And what is your tabletop RPG experience?
Yes, I'm Adept Austin. I'm a mod in the Mithras Discord server. It's probably the best place to go if you want to find me. I'm working on a basketball RPG for a game jam that's going to be coming soon. And I started playing RPGs in 2020. I started with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, but I played that for quite some time. But I played Call of Cthulhu, Powered by the Apocalypse, Easy D6, Trey, Komei Engine, and then, of course, my current obsession is Mithras.
It's funny you say that because you say a game, be like, I love that system, I hate that system, I love that system, I hate that system.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: I've also played those systems as well, and that's how you learn these things. I love hearing that people play more than one system. I don't even care what it is. I love that.
You gotta try it before you know.
And you can always learn something from it. You know, the system is horrible, but there's that one thing that I really like that it did that I want to carry over into like my next. All right, Austin. Austin. I forget what I'm supposed to call you. It says Adept Austin on there. We'll go with that. What habits prevent rules disagreements from derailing the session, especially when emotions run high?
So
it really sucks. I quit. Get out of my channel.
So first thing is, you know, I'm a 4D guy, and I was telling you in the pre-show, it's not really for the immersion. I mean, the immersion is good, but it's for the efficiency of your game sessions. So if you just all agree, no out of character talk during the session, then you're never going to get a rules question. It's just not going to happen. But I don't expect everyone to play that way. So moving further from that, you can change that to, okay, hey guys, let's just all agree. No rules discussion during the session. All right? No rules discussion during the session. Before, afterwards, that's fine. But let's say that's still too much, okay? Well, you can, to avoid these things happening during the session, before the session starts and after the session, make it a rule, right? A rule to discuss the rules before it starts and after it starts. That's the way it's fresh in your mind. Everyone knows what happened beforehand, and you're going into the session. You kind of know what kind of situations are coming up, and some players might even have some schemes, which I love players with schemes. That means they have goals. Ask beforehand. That way, it probably won't come up during the session, or if it does, you already know. And then kind of moving away from that, this is sort of some 4D ideals, but you don't have to play 4D to do this. But if you just remove hypotheticals from your game, so it's like, if I did this, would this happen? No, shut up. Try it. And negotiation. So maybe there's not a rule, right? If someone's doing something, say, you know, you're playing a game that's focused on combat, but for whatever reason, maybe they want to play a sport. It's like, oh, well, there's no rules about this sport. Okay, well, just roll athletics. Yeah, roll athletics, and that will decide it. And then it's like, well, could I roll this other skill, and maybe I could add this to my? No, I asked for this. Just do that. If you want to talk about it afterwards, and this isn't in like a confrontational way. Let me back up a little bit. All this only works if you are very clear with all of your players that there is no adversarial GMing, and it's not even like, oh, I have a small like secret love for when my player characters are suffering, right? If you have to come from like, hey, this is just, I'm trying to run the game efficiently and as everyone gets the most playtime as possible. Don't negotiate, just go. All right. Another thing is, I talked about it a little bit earlier, but don't play to win the scenario. Find players like this as well. Don't play to win the scenario. Play your character. It reminds me of that one clip where, who was it? Oh, goodness. The guy who played Magneto, I think it was, where he's just explaining how acting works. And the guy's like, yeah, he's like, just pretend to be the person and then be the person. And he's like, yeah, that's what acting is. Yeah. If you find players like that, the rules matter a lot less in terms of like fairness, I guess, how it feels. Because if you're playing, like I said, I love chess. So if you're playing chess and someone's not moving the rules correctly, it's never going to work, right? But if you're playing a RPG and chess happens to come up, no one needs to know the rules to chess. You can just say, oh, you can roll a knowledge check or roll a gambling check or something, right? Anything.
What if I say, I move my horsey here?
Excellent.
All right.
And then another thing is, if someone applies a rule wrong or gets something wrong, and this is going to be maybe controversial to some, but I just let it ride. Just let it go. All right? If they're getting something intensely wrong, then somehow in the fiction, I might kind of clamp down on that. Like if we're playing a fantasy game and they say, I take out my lightsaber, you know, then it's like, okay, we have bigger problems here. If it keeps going, I'll clamp it down and be like, oh, you know, you have a shining blade or a shining saber. It's been well waxed or something, right? But if it
Catches the light.
if it keeps going, then it's like, okay, we need to stop the session because obviously I did not vet my players well enough. This is not going well. But if someone says maybe someone adds a +3 when it should have been a +1, I don't care. Like maybe there's something I don't know about as a GM about their character. I'll ask about it later. I might put a little note like, oh, that was weird. I'll ask about it later. But just let it ride. Just let the game keep going. It's not the end of the world. It's just a game.
I'm kind of bewildered that you said the guy who plays Magneto rather than the guy who plays Gandalf.
I didn't watch The Lord of the Rings until after I'd already watched X-Men. So
hey, all right, man, but like, come on. Anyway,
I know. My nerd cred is being destroyed as we speak.
You nerd cred. Yeah. Watch out. You don't want too much of that in the 4D space. Okay.
Wow.
No, yeah, they'll eat you for it. So the question is, what habits prevent the rules disagreements, especially when emotions run high? It's really just session 0. Talk to your players. Have decent players, etc. It's basically just I'm the arbiter, the referee, the game master. When I make a ruling, we have a ruling. Be chill, and everyone's like, all right, I'll be chill. It's kind of that where if you need any more special habits than that, like certain phrases during the table, or like remind them, by the way, I'm the GM, this is my ruling, right? Like, pulling rank and whatnot, then you have other problems. I would say if everyone agrees to the premise of the structure of the game, which is when a ruling needs to be made that the GM has ultimate final say, and everyone's committed to be okay with that, well, then that's really all you need is just decent players who all agree to that.
Anybody else?
I don't know if Ian wants to say anything.
I pretty much agree with what's been said, and it will vary from system to system. So if you're in a fairly light system where adjudication's quick and easy, you're going to have far less of these kind of clashes because there's far less to argue about. The player won't feel. I think players tend to object when they feel they're being unfairly treated. And that's when you suddenly get the, oh, hang on, but the rule says. And if you're running a system where you've got less numbers and more sort of, so I think Castle and Crusades is a good one, where you got your attribute check as normal, and then it's a DC. And the DC is either lowered if it's part of your specialty or it's normal. So there are less moving parts, so there's less to argue about or to get upset about. Session 0 is so important, and setting the stall on, if you think something is being adjudicated wrong, save it till the end of the session. That's a great way of doing it. But sometimes, especially if the player's about to lose their character, they may not feel that's fair, and they may go, no, I want to argue about this now. I want to talk about this now. And that's then when emotions begin to run high. and sometimes
I have a follow-up for that. Let's segue right into that follow-up. When tempers start to rise, what habits or procedures, whatever, that you have found helps you calm the table the fastest? And to be fair, this is out of Austin's segment, so I should have asked him that question. But it is piggybacking on what you said there. Go ahead, Adam, Austin.
Well, I'll be the first to say that at any of my tables, I've never had to deal with such a, maybe I'm just a great GM, but I've never had to deal with anybody who's really angry about a decision or a situation in the game.
That's bullshit. My character should not have died to that. You know my character shouldn't have died to that. I shouldn't be cursing on the show. I'm sorry.
I think you're the first one, Max.
I know. It's my show. Dang it.
I think so assuming that you've already laid the groundwork beforehand where you've vetted your players and you've also tried to make it clear that, hey, I'm not being adversarial. I'm trying to, I maybe even be your character's biggest fan. And then even going further than that, this is actually something I was going to bring up, but if you're making a ruling, I would say always err on the side of the players, right? So, because sometimes when you're making a ruling, you're not always sure, how difficult should I make this? How hard should I be on these guys? Err on the side of caution there. But assuming you've done all that, and someone's just getting really angry, that is definitely a time where I think it's perfectly okay to stop the game, pause, and say, hey guys, we're getting kind of heated here. Let's take a break. If it's really that serious, then this is an out of game problem now. And so that's when I would definitely break my no out of character talk, no rules discussion, right? That because it's not an in-game situation anymore. And so I don't want to sound like, oh, you should just concede to anybody who's making a fuss. But, hopefully you're playing with people who are mature enough to where, okay, there is definitely a real problem here. So you should deal with that, Don't play with people who are emotionally unstable. Maybe more groundwork, but that's how I would stop. I would break my rule and say, okay, hold on, let's stop. Let's pause here and let me hear your argument and say what's going on.
Go ahead, Dean.
Yeah. It's a difficult one because it depends who's around the table. It's going to be easier to control a table that aren't your close friends because you don't have that connection with them. So if I've got a bunch of fresh players, I don't know them, and one of them starts to run hot, I can calm them down pretty quick. When it's your friends, you tend to have that bit of a connection, and sometimes you can run hot with your friends. And I have been in some games where it's got very heated. I've been dragged into the heat as well. It will get to that point, everybody kind of stops, looks at each other, we kind of break for lunch. And then when we come back, tempers are down. And there are only a few times where I've had to call the game to a close and then resolve things between sessions. I don't think that there is an easy answer other than to just try and make sure you keep yourself, if you're running the game, calm, centered. The one thing that I've done, it doesn't probably work for 4D, but it works pretty well for most other tables, is I will describe what an NPC is doing rather than act out what the NPC is doing. So the player doesn't see me getting angry with them. They see the NPC. So I'll say the NPC glares at you with anger in his eyes, and then I'll talk like the NPC. And I found since shifting to that, players don't think I'm against them. They visualize the NPC far more, and that helps to calm things down when you get to dialogues that might run really high. And then I encourage the players to do the same. Describe what you're doing, rather than put it into your voice and then keep your voice calm. So I angrily say, and then say what you're saying rather than angrily say, if that makes sense. And it's to try and take the person out of the situation and to keep the role play within the situation, so people understand this is between characters, not between people. So yeah, it's a difficult one. Yeah.
I don't mean to step on you, Arch, if you want to say something, but what you described there, I think that is very important to talk about with your table before you start playing the game. I remember watching a Seth Skorkowski video where he was talking. Don't judge me, Max.
No. I'm sorry. I'm reading James's chat, not.
Oh. Anyways, where he described an experience he had where there was some I don't want to go against terms of service, but there was some substances, all right? And this guy was like, oh, all these junkies are around, and then the other player said they're called users, all right? And this is from his video, and he described the other player as kind of being obstinate after that, being sort of closed off, and he felt like, oh, maybe I offended him, maybe he had something in his past, right? But it turns out that after the session and later on, he found out that the character had been a drug user, and so they were role playing how that character would feel. And so this is actually one of the main reasons why I have that no out of character talk during the session, is because then there's no confusion ever about, oh, okay, is my friend mad at me or is the character mad at me? It's always the character. It's never my friend, right? And if it does turn out, oh, it's my friend who's mad at me, they're the one that's breaking the rules. So it's that's once again out of game stuff that we need to talk about. Yeah, that's just what you made me think of there, Dean.
All right. Another follow-up then. And I'm rephrasing something that somebody actually posted in the first segment, but seems to fit here. How do you handle a situation? Again, you've got somebody trying to rationalize or justify, and this is for you, Adam, to start. Where there's organic. In my mind, I'm using my words here, so if you want clarification, go ahead and ask for it. Organic to the setting versus organic to reality. Because, for example, a game, one of the things I argue with the Palladium folks all the time is I can't stand simultaneous attack because I will not accept the concept that somebody be like, hit me with the sword. I don't care because I have enough hit points and you can't kill me with it. But you get what I'm saying. Like you have, let's say 30 hit points and a sword does D6 damage. It's not going to kill you. So whatever. And that just, I understand by the rules of the game and the setting, I should be okay with that because I tend to be setting first. But it drives me crazy because that's not reality and nobody would ever do that.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So, or falling, it's only 30-foot fall, which means, I might take a D6 or 3d6 damage, but I got 100 hit points. That's a tuck and roll. Let's get the heck on out of here. Where if you, fall from 30 feet in reality, you could break a leg, you could break a pelvis, you could be lucky and not have, maybe only sprain your ankle, whatever, or you could fall wrong and splat and die, like, you see what I'm saying? So when you compare the organicness of I'm doing this because I'm just thinking of what I would do organically versus settings organic nature. Hopefully I said that in English.
When you say setting, do you mean setting or system?
It could be both. I'm always setting over system because sometimes settings change, like Dungeons & Dragons, for example. Dragonlance changes things from core D&D, although it uses the core D&D background, just as an example. So, but either way, it'd be system in either case, I guess.
Yeah. So, to me, this is maybe a trite response, but just remember that role play solves everything. It solves all of that. All right. So, if I'm playing with somebody who is, they're trying to be immersed in the world and they're trying to act like their character doesn't know they have 30 hit points. Their character doesn't know that, that fall, they don't even know that fall is exactly 30 feet, let alone how much damage that will do to them, right? And so I would, talk to, hey, maybe you should try and get in the character's head just a little bit more. But even further from that, I was having this discussion a while back with some of my fellow game masters that I know, and I was talking to them, what would you do in a situation where you're in an ambush and you're playing D&D 5e, okay? Superhero system. And the fighter is held at crossbow point, pointed at his head, and they're trying to negotiate. And like you were saying, it's like, hand crossbow does what, 1d4, 1d6. I have 100 hit points. I don't care, right? At that point, I wasn't really playing 4D, but if I was playing in that situation and they were treating it like that, it's like, hey man, just so you know you have 100 hit points, but that guy's pointing a crossbow at your face and you have no helmet on. So if you treat him flippantly and he shoots you, you're just going to die. So, like I said, roleplay solves everything, but sometimes that's when you really need to break the rule of the system. It's like, look, man, this system is breaking down. It was not made for this specific situation.
And I think that's the actual, that's essentially my whole answer here is that play a better system. If you have a system that gives someone, 100 hit points and a crossbow does a D8, you're playing a bad system. And yeah, you can say, well, genre emulation. It's about the fact that, I can take 35 punches to the face and all I have is a black eye, and I'm just, it's Diablo. I'm taking a bunch of hits. Okay, fine. Then justify that in the system. I have, been gifted the blood of an immortal and now I can take 100 arrow shots. Okay, cool. Now you can still role play the character. I'm in, semi-immortal character that can take 100 arrow shots. I have 100 health to match that fictional reality. Go ahead and shoot me. Give me your best shot. I don't care, right? As long as the fiction actually matches the system. The problem with so many systems is the fiction does not match the system. The fiction is you are a regular person in a world where a crossbow bolt can kill a person, and you have 35 hit points. And I say, no, absolutely not, right? That's why my system, my whole like guiding principle is diegesis. Is that what? Well, it's a lot of things, but what you as the character experience needs to be represented as accurately as possible in the mechanics. Okay, in my system, you have like 13 HP, and a hit can do 26. So you can get, outright dead from a single hit, right? Because that's actually what can happen if you get run through with a sword, right? That's why armor is really valuable, because like armor is overpowered in my system. Why? Because armor is overpowered in real life, right? I'm not looking for game balance. I'm looking for this is actually what makes sense in the world.
I really like your game.
Oh, I really like my game too. Just as a quick addendum, I also have the other genre emulation rules where you can be super powerful and have 100 hit points and cleave 5 enemies with a single hit. I have those rules in there as well, but they are all explained in the fiction. You have now been gifted the mantle of an Arcan. You have now been named a paragon by the gods of this world. You have been given these abilities and these gifts, and now you actually have all this hit points and all this XYZ, right? But it always has to be justified in the fiction. You cannot, I just would not play a game where the fiction going on is not represented in the mechanics. That's why I don't like story games, because I'm like, how does this mechanic of making a move actually, what does this look like in the fiction, right? They have to be one and the same as closely as possible in order for me to actually get immersed and enjoy it. Simulation is paramount for me. Not paramount, it's first. It has to be there. Simulation, consistent rules, and then all the rest.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to answer, Dean?
Yeah, I'm gonna answer now.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you did already or not. So
no. So we're talking about reality versus metagaming, I think.
Kind of,
so
yeah.
Someone says, I've got X hit points. To answer the first thing, it depends what hit points represent. If hit points represent, and within Untold Destiny, we made it very clear, hit points represent your ability to shrug off. It's a glancing blow. You manage to dive out the way. It's not a connecting hit. So hit points, in your example, someone's got the crossbow, you're shooting. I've got the hit points, the battle stamina. I know I can dodge, I can weave, I can get close to my opponent before they can land a potentially fatal blow. When I get down to 0 hit points, at that point, oh god, yeah, now any damage I take is potentially fatal, and I can be taken out. And for the player now has within their mind a visualization of what their character's doing. They're not taking damage, even though they're losing hit points, until they drop to 0 hit points, and then they are taking damage, physical wounds, they can die. However, that's not to take away from what you've done, Arch, which I think is absolutely genius as well. I think, having that hyper-realistic system to support that narrative kind of story play for people who want to play that kind of game, where they, one wrong turn, you could lose your character. I think that's brilliant as well. And I think that addresses the problem. I think one of the issues you have when it comes to, and 5e is really bad for this, it's that metagaming knowledge. I'm a barbarian, I'll jump down 100 feet because it can't kill me. And you're there looking at the player going, really? Seriously? Your barbarian is standing on top of this cliff looking down, and you, the player, knows the fall's not going to kill you, but your barbarian doesn't. Whatever. And you get a lot of that in 5e, where the metagaming aspects come in and it informs the player's role play.
But that kind of goes to the question that I asked in segment 1, where it's like, yeah, but it's just a game, man.
Yeah, it's and it is, and it's finding that game that suits what you want from it. So for people who want that kind of superhero kind of, and they don't want the hyperrealism, yeah, go play the game that best suits what you want from it. I like immersive games. I like games where there is a bit more rhyme and reason, but where your character won't die at a moment's notice. So the players are a little bit more invested in their characters and have that running through. But that's just the style of game I like to play. There was something... No, I've lost it there. But I think
that's why I have to do this. I have to write my notebook constantly.
Austin, it's your turn, but I have something to say after you're done.
Well, we started with Austin on that, but if we want to continue that discussion, go ahead.
I'll just do it real quick.
Yeah, we're still in segment 2. Yeah.
Yeah, if you like if you're playing a game that's like, oh, realism or like faux realism, then yeah, that barbarian jumping off is like, why are you doing that? But if you're playing it more like, I think someone said it in the chat, where it's like, oh, we're fantasy superheroes, then that makes sense. That's like, you know, Hulk jumping off the cliff. But, you know, table agreement, everything like that. That's all I want to say. Go ahead, Arch.
I think I have a video on this. I absolutely detest the HP take that you just expounded there, Dean. I see it pop up so many times in play where people are like, oh, HP is actually a representation of your luck and your stamina and your will to fight, etc. And I'm like, no, it's absolutely not. Hit points is and only can be your physical damage, the physical damage that you take. It cannot be anything else, no matter what the D&D 5e handbook says, because of two very, like, for several reasons, like just the language, but two absolutely irrefutable reasons why HP can be nothing but physical damage taken.
Yeah, I was talking about the system I developed called Untold Destiny, where HP is your luck, and we have a wound system for the permanent wounds you take when you drop to 0. Rather than 5e. I can understand the confusion. I do agree with you. The way 5e puts itself forward, HP is you soaking damage. And I've never liked that concept. Especially then when you go to 0 and you got death saves and you got this yo-yo effect of you coming back up and you're almost...
I call it the whack-a-mole game system. Where you're down, you're up, you're down, you're up, you're down.
It is. Yep. Yeah. Whereas I prefer to have a more permanent wound-based system, but one where it's a little bit gamified because the player wants to feel they can actually get involved in the action. And it's heroic roleplay, not superhero roleplay.
Okay, so you're not using the 5e thing. No. Okay, my mistake. I do have a question though. Do you have resistances and immunities in your system, like immune to a certain damage type, like fire damage or whatever? Do you have that?
Only certain creatures will have immunities, but there are resistances. So half damage and armor can mitigate damage.
Okay, so could there conceivably be a situation where a character gets immunity to fire damage?
No.
Okay, but a monster could, another NPC.
Only certain monsters. So fire elemental would obviously be immune to fire.
Okay, all right.
But it would be rare.
Okay, cool. It sounds like your system does not fall into the terrible trap that 5e falls into. We're good. Yeah. I was trying to
it did start before 5e, and I will just say this could be another thing we have discussions about afterward. Because you took a page out of what I call the Heathen Dog Handbook on that one, because he and I argue about hit points all the time, and I think you're on his side, and I take the other side of it when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons.
That makes sense because you also think it's okay to fudge the monster's HP. So
I do. Well, again, when I tell that story, hopefully it'll make more sense. And usually I have one or two of my players in chat. I don't know, Eric, if you're watching, you were there.
I would
testify, Eric.
Anyway, all right. Well, I think we've kind of knocked this segment out of the park. Unless there's any alibis, any last comments you guys have about this one before we go into segment 3.
I actually did. We focused a lot on disputes for maintaining momentum. I would just like to say that if you have something like the things that pop into your head when you're like, oh, the momentum is slowing down, is looking up rules or players like oohing and aahing, trying to make a decision. And a lot of the time that oohing and aahing is because they're either A, trying to optimize their turn, or B, they're trying not to die. And those things make sense. Yeah. Oh yeah, the timer. Only talking in character. I did not include this. No turns by committee. Ever. It doesn't matter whether it's combat. If it's out of combat, just speak in character and you can discuss, in character, right? But that can definitely slow the game down. Just because.
You don't want me to tell you what spell you should be casting this round?
Unless it's planning beforehand. But that's something that can really slow things down, is when everyone tries to, you're all friends, you're trying to work together, but I can't remember what game developer said it, but they said, given the opportunity, players will optimize the fun out of anything.
Out of the game.
So just try to avoid that.
Austin, I've got to plug my own system real quick for a second. The turns by committee is such a problem, and it slows everything down. This is why in my system, you have your 4 actions: your move, your achieve, which is just what you do. It's your main action. Your move, your achieve, your speak, and your think. If you talk to another player, even outside of character, hey, you should cast a spell, I say that took your speak action. Boom, you've spent an action to talk out of character to do this turn by committee. And if you do it again, you lose another action. And so, like, you literally are incentivized to shut your mouth while you're playing this game, because if you speak anything at all at the table, it's taking your actions in combat, and that's an action that you cannot spend on other useful things. So my whole system is about how do I incentivize mechanically good play. All right, my plug is done. We totally agree, Austin.
I would disagree slightly with that, but only slightly, and it comes down to
No, come on. We need some debate here.
No,
You hate it.
I have found players often enjoy especially when they're up against a tough fight, having that quick moment. You got to control how long they have, but that moment to talk and cooperate. And it is most roleplay games are about that cooperation between the party. And if you stop the party talking to each other, you kind of break that cooperation, in my opinion. That said, if it works at your table and it adds to your roleplay experience, then you're doing it right for you. And I would never get in your way of doing that. At my table, I allow the players to talk because I find the players, they get a lot more out of the game. They feel a lot more involved, and often they tactically come up with some brilliant ways of tackling some very tough challenges. And I like that.
Are you talking about specifically during combat, or because I think you said something about downtime?
No, during combat. So for example, at the start of a round, the players may suddenly go, hang on. So I've got one ruling, the group ruling, which is if players group, they can decide which order they go in initiative, and that gives them an opportunity to quickly discuss how they're tackling and who should go first. It opens up things like tactical thinking in battle, which is a player might go, look, I can rush in. I'll barge that opponent, get them on the ground because they're really good at dodging and getting out the way. And once they're on the ground, then the rogue, you get in, you do your attack, and the players coordinate quickly. I keep track on how long they're taking to talk, and if they take too long, the hourglass comes out, and they lose actions unless they move quite quickly. So from my point, around my table, I allow the players to chat during a combat to coordinate, but it's kept short, and I've never found it's taken away from the momentum, and often the players they get a lot of enjoyment out of it still.
Yeah, if I think in that kind of game that makes a lot of sense, because it sounds, tell me if I'm wrong, but like in your games you're not like trying to win the scenario, but you're trying to perform well. You want to have a victorious outcome, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And like I was saying in my games, one of the main rules is no out of character talking, and so that would be very strange to stop like at the top of the initiative, which I don't use initiative very often. But if you just stop at the top of the initiative, it's like, all right, guys, hold on, strategize. Then it would be strange. But yeah, in your game, I think that's the best way to do it. Instead of saying no turn by committee, you put it all in like a little box. It's like, this is your time. Use it wisely.
I see the goal that you're trying to achieve, which is, allow them to have some cooperation. Cooperation is fun. But in the same way that third edition had a good goal, but went about it poorly, I think it's a good goal, but it's an imperfect method. Wouldn't it be even better if you actually told the players, hey, no out of character talking. If you talk in the middle of combat, that's your speak action, okay? And then they say, well, I guess we're going to do what our characters would actually do. We're hiding in the bushes. We see all the goblins and orcs over there. Let's play them here. Hey, cleric, you run in center. You cast that, healing radius, spell, miracle thing. Rogue, you sneak around the back. As soon as you, stab the big guy and there's a commotion, that's when we'll sprint in. Fighter, you're in front. mates in the back, etc. You coordinate, and like you can still have that moment of planning, but it's in character, it's outside of combat. They can take the time that they need, and it's actually immersive and diegetic, and they're actually talking with each other, and you as the player are experiencing the same thing the character is that we're planning before. And then when you actually rush into combat, no out of character talking, which means now there's actual tension. Now there's like, man, I really hope he remembers the plan, man. I really hope that this works out. And like, oh man, I hope this guy takes it well. Like we already talked about this. Now you still preserve the tension of combat where you can't really talk. I mean, yeah, maybe you can spend a speak action and yell at something, but you can't really plan and have a turn by committee. You can't really strategize. And so you maintain the tension of the combat and you get the benefit of the planning beforehand. I say that is the best of both worlds. I would much prefer that. What do you think?
Horses for courses. If you've got players who love to play like that, and I have been at tables where it has been all in character role play, and you've got to have the right players at the table. There are a lot of players, and I mean a hell of a lot, who cannot do that, and it's purely because they either don't want to, or they feel uncomfortable, or for whatever reasons. And if your rule is you've got to remain in character, and you've got a player who decides actually that player is going to leave your table, which is fine. They've got to find the game that best suits them. Having players being able to break out of character, talk to each other, just alleviates some of the pressure. You can still maintain a high degree of momentum, and that momentum is gone through how you inform your players of the peril they're in. And I've had combats where players have been talking to each other in between turns to try and come up with solutions, ways of working together. And for me at my table, I think inter-cooperation between the players and working together as a team to overcome the challenges is far more important than having everybody remain in character. And the players at my table love it, they enjoy it, and at the end of a tough encounter, they'll be like high-fiving each other and going, that was brilliant. The momentum's maintained, the threat's maintained, but without a stringent rule to say you can't communicate with each other and you have to remain in character. But as I said, I think for the players who want what you offer, they will love your table, and they'll probably hate my table. So,
it really is about what the players want. But just one thing you said, when you talk and you have that cooperation and strategizing, it relieves some of the pressure. That to me is the opposite of what I want. I don't want to relieve the pressure. I want the pressure there. I want the tension there, and like that to me is the fun. That's the thrill. That's the uncertainty of combat, the fog of war. I don't know if we're going to strategize perfectly. I don't know if this is going to work. To me, that's the fun. That's the good part. That's what I want. I don't want to relieve that at all. But again, different tables. If your players want a more relaxed environment, they want to relieve the pressure, that makes perfect sense. Just different tables for different folks. It depends on what you're going after.
And to be very clear here, just for the folks who are both in chat watching and who watch this later, that's the point of the panels. These guys have been actually two on board, two on the same page today. I'm glad we're having this we'll kind of give and take here, because this is what's important for you to see out there to determine what you think is the best for your table. Now, with that said, I think Dean, you wanted to keep going there.
I would. I'd like to come back with the fact that I've had situations where players have come up with a strategy, and the momentum, the threat, the suddenly they're going, can we pull this off? And they're watching each other as they take their turns. They're invested in what's going on right now because they've got this plan, and they rely on each other to get this plan to work. And if it doesn't work, they could lose a character, or they could be knocked on the back foot, or this could be the only path to victory. And all of a sudden now, you've got every player invested in their plan. And it's that threat, that kind of, it just drags them into what's going on. And I've had situations where people have been watching one player roll dice with breaths held because they are like, oh my God, this has got to work. This has got to work. This has got to work. And for me, I think that's what I want for my players. I want them to feel part of that combat. I want them to feel that every dice roll is a dice roll between life and death. And by coordinating, you bring all your players in. and they all feel invested in what's going on. It's their plan that may succeed or not.
All right, well,
But
we're actually gonna have to wrap this up. We can do more in the members only if you guys want to come back to this. I'll give each one of you one quick final comment, just to give you your opportunity there. But we do have to move it on to the next segment so we have enough time for segment 4 this week. But we can absolutely come back to this if in the members only side. So, Arch, did you want to jump in on something there?
I just want to start driving a dragon's comment. He said, I had an ear to the ground the minute I heard the blasphemy from Arch. I want to know what he means. Hey,
well, it's driving. It's driving in dragons. So he'll be on next week, I think, as a matter of fact, on the show. So you might be on intelligence as a dump stat. Yeah, at some point. Who knows?
I'm happy to hear where
it's all fun. It's all fun. Don't take it all that seriously. But I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to start a meta conversation with the chat there, but I'll start. We'll read it in a moment here. So
I'm down to move on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. No, and by the way, I think this is great. Like the lot of agreement going on, which is good because that shows that there's some consistency in the hobby. But what we really like, and it's not for the fighting, it's not for the drama or whatever terms people want to use, but it's to give people out there, I kind of like Dean's way of doing it. No, I kind of like Adam's way of doing it. Nah, man, Arch is where it's at. I want people to come out of here saying, I took a little piece from here, a little piece from there, whatever. So, and that's why, when chat's going a little weird sometimes, they're arguing back and forth. That's fine. Just keep it. You guys know how to keep it. The timeout and ban hammers do work. But yeah, this is what we're here for. So I think this is good stuff today. All right, let's So where are we here? We're in segment 2, so we got to get to segment 3. So don't forget to share the stream, tap that hype button, and help us get this discussion trending. I'm sure one day I can see this as like 99 on the hyped comments or hype videos somewhere, maybe. You or someone... What's that?
With my blurry face.
You know what? It'll make it harder for people to recognize you on the street. So look for the outfit. Someone may make an amazing panelist like these guys. Sign up on the GMI Discord, link in the description, read the rules, and find a panel topic that interests you. In segment 3, our panelists will talk about long-term impact of consistent rulings. But before we do that, let's finish the segment with some super chats and starred comments and see what you weirdos had to say. I already read that one. Did I read that Sky Blue Demon was a new member? I'm not sure, so we'll do it again. There you go. And I have to read this, guys. It's a super chat. Although I'm regretting all my life. This is DM James, just to let you know right now, $50 and I will drink. I kind of need that right now. Just saying. I got brand new whiskey, too, that my wife bought. Anyway, for $5, DM James says, how would you handle a cleric cursing his party mate so he can't be with his own wife? Even hymns won't help. Hold on, we're not done yet. Follow-up cleric is Hyperborean. Wife is Hyperborean. Husband is Atlantean. Thank you for the $10, James.
This is the insight we come here for.
You're right. Hey, DM James is he's a good guy. Might be off topic a little bit, but he's a good guy. So I don't have an answer for you because I actually have not run a game of Hyperborea. So I don't know. I'd have to look that up. So there we go.
Let him do it. His character did it.
There you go. You're cursed. You can't be with your own wife. All right. And Thruxus had a compliment out here. Nice vest, Archmaster. I had a similar one when I played Tremere in LARP. And he was. I know Thruxus well enough. He's not messing with you.
Thank you, Thruxus.
Nice
I have been trying to post comments on this thing, and for some reason, none of my comments are going through. But I tried to thank you.
Yeah, you're probably not going to be able to do it through the through StreamYard itself. You have to be in the YouTube video. That's my guess.
Yeah, might bump over there.
Let me find that. I knew that. I should have just opened it up.
Doc Flamingo, who's on the show recently, down with the Capellan Confederation. You're a horrible, horrible person, sir. We need to take you to the re-education camp. I refuse to capitalize their vile name. You know what? I refuse to read any more of your comment. Oh, wait, there was no more. Thank you very much for being a member for 20 months. I appreciate you, sir. And there we go. Let's put it up here. Diving Dragon says your PCs have adventured together for months or weeks. Your players, as those characters, have maybe spent hours, and there was more to it that for whatever reason I didn't. Basically saying, maybe that outside conversation would work because the characters actually know each other at this point. So what are your thoughts on that?
I have thoughts. That is sometimes true. That's my first thing. I've seen this, the thought sometimes. As a game master, I'm always on the side of the players, right? And so if they're doing something that, at first glance or as our first thought, I don't think that would work, but their characters are experts. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And all that planning where unless you're a basketball team that you're practicing all the time, you're playing 82 games a season, that's when it's things become automatic. I know when I drive, my buddy's going to run to that corner. I don't even have to look. I can throw the ball that way, right? And that's that automatic response that Driving and Dragons is talking about. Most people are not that experienced in combat to have that automatic I know my friend's going to do that, right? Unless you've been going through training for a long time. I know, Max, you were in the service. I thank you for your service. That's something different. But most of the time, if we're talking about the typical fantasy setting, they're not soldiers. They're adventurers. They've not gone through, even though, they're very capable people, adventurers, they've not practiced hours and hours and hours doing these same things. So that's just how I think about it. If, like I was saying, Dean, I'm not saying your way of playing is wrong. I think it's fine. It's just different tables for different players, right?
And
he's sniffing.
So I'm gonna take Driving and Dragons comment as is. Yes, I think you're right, Austin. I think that isn't always the case, but we're just gonna assume that it's the case. We're gonna assume that you've been going for 10 years and you're this 18, right? My whole goal, the whole thing that I'm trying to do when I sit down to play at the table is I want to inhabit the character. I want to have the same experience that the character is having. I don't want to play a storytelling game. I don't want to tell a story about someone else being awesome. I want to be awesome. I want to be that character in the world. I want to put myself in his shoes, role play him, role fill him. I want to be them. So to that end, I want to merge my player's experience, the player's experience with the character's experience as much as possible, right? So I would rather just spend actual time talking to my fellow players and coming up with strategies in character. We can do it over text, in between sessions. We can do it in the session. So many ways that if we assume, the characters are all, they know each other very well, and they have made all these strategies so that as soon as they pop into combat, they just know exactly what they're going to do. Well, then do that as the players. Talk about strategy, have play 1, play 2, play 3, plan out what you're going to do, and then when you pop into session, do it. That is the real experience of that. Instead of pretending that the characters, are experts, expert strategists, and they work well together, make it real. Actually be expert strategists. Actually work well together. Don't just pretend and wreck the pacing and have all the out-of-character talk. Actually put in the work to make it real, to make it true. I want the experience at the table to be real and not just let's pretend that our characters are good. No, actually do it. You be the player, you be good, and make your character good, because you and the character's experience are one.
All right. Okay. And again, we can go ahead and finish up your thoughts if you want.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting take, and I think we're almost bordering on what is role play as a topic in itself here. Because when I have players around the table, I think they view their ability to talk to each other in the middle of a combat as a necessity as part of their sort of what their characters would do. So a party that have adventured together, understand each other's tactics, and can coordinate. But It's if you're playing an online game, you're all connected via your mics. You're busy running around. It's Call of Duty, something like that. You can talk to each other pretty fast, and you can coordinate incredibly fast, especially if you're a group that have played several times together. And that is sometimes hard to replicate in a role-play environment where, short of going LARP, where everything is happening in real time, you've got these kind of time moments where a couple of minutes might pass. In reality, that represents a couple of seconds in the game. And I feel you have this kind of, you're trying to replicate the game as real as possible. And sometimes that's just not possible. And trying to achieve that, in my view, is probably, I'm struggling with the words here, but it's, I allow my players to kind of break out of character and talk to each other, because sometimes it's just a game. And as much as they're trying to be in their characters, sometimes talking to each other helps them get back into their characters. And they feel more in their characters by coordinating and talking than if I kind of isolate them a bit and say you can only be in character and you can't talk out of character. However, I understand what you're saying, which is it's a very different experience. And if anything, Arch, I'm reminded of the days I did LARPing, where you were always in character, but the combats were very different. And again, the combats there was a lot of talking in combat. A hell of a lot of talking when we were LARPing and coordinating and getting ourselves together and, you know, forming lines and you know, pushing enemies back. So yeah, it's, I've fumbled over my words there, but what I'm trying to say is, yeah, I like what Driving and Dragons said. I think that's a great way of actually looking at that, which is you got an adventuring group, they know each other, they can communicate each other, and sometimes you got to gamify something, and that gamification is just having those an extra minute or two for the party to talk to each other and coordinate.
For the record, I don't know when it is. I know sometime this year I will have a discussion on what it means to roleplay and what roleplay means. I'll have to look. I don't think it's in May, because May is going to be all about mystery and intrigue and so forth like that. But it's coming up sometime in the future. And what I really want is I want a 4D, I want a middle of the road, and I want somebody who, in my terms, barely role plays at all. Just sits there and is like, hey, move Fred forward 2 squares, and all right, I roll. You know, I want all of them there to espouse their game style. But and we'll see if that happens in the future. But we do have to move on here. Go if it's quick, go ahead. Otherwise, we can hit the members only.
I was just gonna say I am the middle of the road guy. I'm not. The 4D people hate me. I'm middle of the road.
I mean, fair. No, I get that. But how do I say this? When I say 4D in this regard, I'm kind of talking extremes intentionally. But
we're talking about Conway.
yeah, there you go. Conway over here. Man, he's dead now, and thank God. Yes, I said that. But Shadzar over here. If you don't know who he is, you're a blessed person. I unfortunately had to know that guy. And no, I'm not mad that he's dead. And you can write all the nasty comments that you want. And then somebody more, middle of the road that sees kind of like Dean or me to some degree, although I think I lean a little heavier role play than him, not sure, but I want that in the future. And I'm saying that like this much because that is a future topic. I just don't know when. I have to look at how the schedule lays out. And I think that will be a fun topic to cover, because I'm the guy that will sit here and while I say it's absolutely crap, and I mean that, I will at least acknowledge that the guy who sits there chewing his potato chips, hey, move Fred 2 squares forward. I'm attacking with my axe. I rolled a 16. I think that's a hit, and I do 4 points of damage. I hate it. But I will actually argue that he is role-playing because he's technically playing a role.
Oh, we got to talk about that.
Go away from my table, though.
Lastly, one thing. Dean, you and I essentially agree on all the actual points of they want to be able to talk to each other, collaborate, etc. We only disagree on when should that be. I say it should be done beforehand, and you say, we'll let them do it in the middle of the session. That's really the only place we disagree. All the essence of the actual goal of what we're trying to do, we're on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, there we go. Oh, I'm sorry. Nope. Can't let this drop. Mondo Hand 71 sends in his $20. You're like, wait, it says 50. Well, he sent it through Apple, which means that 30% is taken off by YouTube and another 30% is taken off by Apple. But
no way.
Yeah, that's anytime you see a
Apple
dot
takes all your
99
money.
anytime you see a dot 99 so really it's about I think I'm getting, if I remember correctly, because of how the math works, I think I'm getting like $27 or something like that. But you know what? It still came up with that red color. So he gets a drink, and he's been a really good support of the channel. Now, for tonight's drink, I have a new whiskey. This is the more foo-foo one, but my wife wanted me to open this one first, and she beats everybody. It doesn't matter how much you super chat. It's called American Honey. Her honey. From the makers of Wild Turkey. Exceptionally smooth liqueur blended with honey and bourbon whiskey. So there we go. It's only like 50 proof or whatever the hell it is. Oh, no. This is 71 proof. Okay, this is 71 proof. At least there's a little alcohol in here. One of the other ones over there is 100 proof. So funny thing is she can't have any right now. But she wanted me to open this so she could try it at some point. So there we go. That's what we're having. She buys the alcohol. Don't blame me. At least it's not in a plastic bottle this time, folks. Yeah. Glare at me. You can't have this. All right. Thank you, Mondo Hand. Really appreciate it. And I will read that. Actually, I should read the chat right now. Boom! Great panel tonight, fellas. I agree. This is a great panel. Sorry, Max. Blame Apple for the $49.99. I am. I'm not blaming you. I'm blaming Apple. That is for sure. But thank you very much for the super chat. And
Down
that's not bad. Very little honey. It pretty much just tastes like whiskey with a touch of sweet. A lot better than that brandy I've been drinking.
They were driving by the honey factory when they brewed it.
It's like a little spit in there. All right, that was actually pretty good. I like that. All right, let's move on to our third segment here. We're getting limited on time, but the third segment tends to be the fastest one anyway. And that taken care of, let's meet our third panelist and our final question, which asks about long-term impact of consistent rulings. And we have Archmaster on here. Who are you? What content or games do you create? And what is your tabletop RPG experience?
Okay, first of all, I don't believe tabletop role-playing games exist. Secondly, I've been playing these tabletop adventure games for about 4.5 years. And I am currently in the midst of creating my own game system and world and game philosophy and this whole big project I call Arches of Apsoldon. And you can join my Discord and watch my YouTube channel where I tell you how almost everything you think about tabletop role-playing games is wrong, and I'm here to tell you the right way to do it, and it's actually called the Arch game. Anyway, I have various opinions that seem to clash with a lot of people.
I missed the chill stream. Just saying. That would have been great for the chill stream. And some of you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, my apologies. I shouldn't interrupt you.
No, you're good. That's pretty much it. I say a lot of things that rub a lot of people the wrong way, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "It's 5 million. I've written over 5 million words in 4 years." Okay. Just since I discovered this, I was like, since I discovered, role playing and all that, I was like, oh my goodness, there's like ideas of worlds and game mechanics and philosophy and everything just outpouring. So I do think I am I do think there's a lot to offer in my system, which is why I have a channel and why I am so doggone. You cannot win an argument with me because I'm absolutely certain that all my ideas are perfectly correct. And so, yeah, that's me.
It's almost like I cloned myself and put him in the third spot. This is awesome. I love it. So I just want to remind folks that all of the links that these guys gave me are in the description. So go subscribe, go buy games, go do whatever the heck it is you're supposed to do on their channels. I'll check them out. But let's ask this final question here. Looking back, how have consistent, though not necessarily rigid, consistent rulings strengthened trust and stability in your campaigns?
I think this is one of the hardest questions to answer because it's so simple. Like, how do I make this a satisfying answer? I made a consistent ruling, and the players were able to consistently predict the consequences of their actions going forward, and therefore they had satisfying play. It's like I can try to think back to the very many times I've come up with a ruling and held it consistent going forward, but I'm not sure if that would actually satisfy. I think I think consistency itself and the predictability of the mechanics of the rules going forward is its own evidence. Like, I had a player who, had part of his soul merged with his body so that he could turn ethereal sometimes. And he, I was like, you can go ethereal for a minute, and you can walk on surfaces if you want, but you can move through anything else. And there was this time he was chained up to the mast with all of his allies, and I had totally forgotten about his ability. That's one of my favorite things, when players have abilities that I totally forgot about, I do not plan for. And he's chained up with his buddy's sister, like the sister of another character at the table. And they're like 10 pirates all around him. He's chained to the mast, and he's like, I turn ethereal and walk through the chains, and then pull out my sword and do like the Palpatine twirl and stab the guy. I was like, you can go ethereal and walk through the chains. I totally forgot. And just like when you give someone a ruling, because that wasn't on his character sheet, that was just something he got from play. When you have a ruling and it's consistent, and then you don't give any any sort of fiat where, oh no, you can't for this time because the iron is anti-magic and it doesn't let you use your ability, right? It's like, no, I played it consistently, let him have his moment, and it was awesome, and it was totally not what I planned at all, which is perfect, because I don't really plan, I just role play the characters. But yeah, stuff like that. If you are completely consistent with all of your rulings, then you enable moments that the moments that everyone talks about, where they say these are the goals. It's the moments where you surprise the GM, the moments where you went off the rails, the moments where you did something totally unexpected and it was awesome, right? That's kind of what players want. They don't want to just make all the right attack rolls, and because they had a +7 modifier, they killed all the bad guys in the encounter, right? Yeah, that can be kind of fun, but the things we remember are the time when you used some niche ability that someone homebrewed, or some random thing in some odd situation that no one accounted for, and it was all run consistently enough that it actually worked, right? That's kind of the whole magic of that consistency, is that you essentially alleviate the boredom that comes with the repetition of the rules when you are consistent in those edge case rulings, and you let them essentially act as rules.
Before one of these guys do, let me jump in, because one of the things I want to remind folks, and I'm kind of saying this to you guys, the panelists as well, is there could be somebody watching this that has no clue or no experience. So for us, a lot of times, exactly as you started it out, man, this is such an easy answer. I agree with you. I'm sure these two guys agree with you as well. But there might be somebody watching and be like, I never thought of it that way before, or I'm new to this, so tell me more about this. And this is also for some of the folks in chat that are kind of getting a little spurgy at times here. We're not addressing you personally. We're trying to address a greater audience as well. Now, with that, I'm going to ask you a quick follow-up, Arch, because I think you had a really good answer there. But I want to pinpoint just one part of this. How do consistent rulings help players make smarter decisions and take the game world, or a game system in your case, more seriously?
Yeah, you're right. To me, it's a self-answering question. It's so obvious. Let me see if I can really unpack this, because a world that, it's something I call the axioms of fundamental diegetic verisimilitude.
That's the third time you used the word diegetic or diegesis. You better start describing or explaining that to people, because most people don't know what that means.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
For the sake of this discussion here, the way I use diegesis and diegetic, etc., its various forms, is the unity of the player's experience with the character's experience. Okay. As close as possible, the two are the same. That's what I mean by diegetic. So, the one of the axioms of fundamental diegetic verisimilitude is, and by the way, I invented those things. So anyway, one of them is that the world is consistent. Okay, the world is pre-existent and it's consistent, and it is larger than you, and actions have consequences. Right? That's how the real world works. The real world is pre-existent. It's larger than you. It exists even when you're not looking at it, etc. And actions have permanent consequences. You wake up tomorrow, and yes, you still drank an 8-pack of beer last night. Right? Actions have consequences. The world doesn't just reset. It's persistent, etc. So when you treat a fictional world with the same axioms of fundamental diegetic verisimilitude, and you say the world is pre-existent, it is consistent, it is larger than you, it is shared and the same for all, no co-creation where this guy sees one thing in his head and this guy sees a different thing in his head, it's the same for all, and it is persistent. When you take all 5 of those axioms and you apply them to the game world, and you say the game world is pre-existent, etc., all the rest of them, and then your rulings reflect that, then you instill in the players the same sense of realism and the same respect for the fictional world as they do for the real world. It feels familiar. They say, wait a minute, in the real world, things are pre-existent and consistent and long-term, etc. The fictional world, it's pre-existent and consistent long-term. Oh, wow. I have to treat this with the same respect I would the real world because the rulings and everything are consistent. This feels real. It checks out in my brain. There's a green check mark that says, yeah, this has all the same DNA that the real world has. It operates the same way that the real world does. That, it helps them treat it seriously. It helps them actually plan and strategize. If you break any one of those 5 axioms, you make it feel fundamentally less real and therefore fundamentally lighter, less weighty. It's more of just a game. It's more of just a flippant. I want the experience that I provide to be weighty.
Okay. By the way, guys, go ahead and jump in. I just want to hit that follow-up just for a little more diving in, but so I kind of apologize for taking your time away, but go ahead. Whatever you guys want to say on top of this.
I'm letting Dean go.
Okay. Thank you. Consistent ruling, building trust. Yeah, I don't think we need to go too deep into this. If players know that you're going to be fair and consistent in how you treat them, they're going to enjoy the game, and that trust will be built. If you're constantly flip-flopping, changing your mind, 1 minute you're saying, oh, you're falling 30 feet, take 100 damage, and next minute you're going, oh, you're falling 30 feet, oh, you mysteriously parkour and land on your feet, then your players are not going to trust you, and their immersion within the world will break, and they'll step out of their characters. So I do agree with Arch, probably not with all the big words, but it's if you create a believable world for your players, they will believe their characters exist in that world. And you create that believable world by being consistent in how you rule the world operates around them and reacts to them, including all the consequences of their actions, etc. And that's pretty much it. So just be consistent, make your world feel alive and real. Make it react the same way if the characters keep doing the same things, and the players will believe in that world, they will trust you running that world, and they will enjoy the game.
I just had a couple questions for, I guess, Arch and also Dean, but it's Arch's segment. So for consistency, I guess your biggest, all of our belief is that consistency is best because it allows the players to predict what's going to happen based on their actions. Is that correct?
Yeah, predictability.
Yeah, predictability.
Not necessarily
I think that's
predictability. Sorry, because if the players do something which they don't know what's going to happen, they have to have faith that you've adjudicated that consistently with everything you've done before. So they might not be able to predict it, but what they can do is predict that your resolution of what they've done will be fair and will be consistent with what they've done before.
Yeah, similar to, like, imagine you were playing Light Bulb, the RPG, and I flick the light on. Normally that would turn the light on, but maybe sometimes the light will be out, or it'll go out right away, or maybe, oh, that's the wrong light switch or something, right?
Yeah, within reason. Yeah,
within reason, of course. So I had a question about the story where you were talking about what that excellent. I could see the image in my brain where they were tied up and then they just phased through it, right? I'm sure you were as surprised as probably those the pirates were, right? But I had the question in my mind. So you forgot in the moment, but then when they did it, you're like, oh, of course, right? What if when they did it, the recollection didn't come to your brain? You didn't remember that they had been given that ability or what have you. How would you have handled that situation?
How would I have handled it? What's the goal of
So imagine, maybe you're in a 5-year-long campaign and they gained this ability in month one.
I understand. I'm wondering what the goal of the question is.
Oh, I'm just wondering because, like, we're talking about consistency.
Yeah.
And at that moment, the GM is sort of like, to be consistent, they have to go through against assuming that you didn't remember and you're like, wait, they don't have this ability from your recollection. The consistent thing would be to go against your knowledge, but does that make sense?
Yeah. So if I hadn't remembered that they had that, which I think has happened plenty of times, like at the moment, I didn't remember that he had it until he used it, and then it jogged my memory. And so your question
I'm saying
is,
if it didn't jog your memory,
right? Then I would be like, what ability is that? And he's like, I talked to the hag in the plane of fairy, and I got the ability to face the wall. So I'm like, oh yeah. But if that happened, that would be a failing of my mental hardware. That's something that I would hope would never happen. I would hope that I would remember all the abilities that I gave them and whatnot. So, I mean, the answer is like, if I ever like have a mental failing, if I forget a rule or I forget something, then I'll probably have to ask, "What are you doing?" And then he'll tell me. But again, that's not optimal. I would rather remember everything, and generally I do.
Yeah. And then I had one further question. I stole this from chat. I think Malachi said it. So you had, and this is not a slight on you at all, so please don't take it this way. Like I forget abilities all the time that my players have. So, but how would you handle the situation if, and this may not have been the situation at the table, but if you, the game master, had forgotten about that ability, but these pirates would have known about that ability, how would you handle that situation?
When I, as the GM, have failed to accurately roleplay the characters based on the knowledge that they would have technically had at the time. Again, that is a failure on my part as the GM. Optimally, hopefully, that would never actually happen. If it did happen, I would treat it the same way I would treat any other failure of play itself. If someone fails to get the math right and they fail to use their ability right, or they fail to mark down their loss of vitality or their injuries, or if I fail to roleplay the NPC correctly, I fail to use the knowledge he has, etc. Anytime that happens, I generally don't do retcons, if that's what you're saying, not unless it like immediately happened. It's generally just I pretty much try to use abduction and justify it after the fact to be like, well, if they knew about this but didn't do it, and like it already happened at the table that they didn't counter this ability that they knew about, in order to keep the world consistent, there had to have been a reason. So I'll generally, I mean, this hasn't happened very much, so I'm just hypothesizing what I would do, but I would probably come up with some kind of justification rather than just say, I forgot, so they forgot. Because that to me is immersion breaking. It's like, oh, okay, the characters just forgot. I would come up with something that made it still seem consistent to the players. Like, oh yeah, there was an evil witch that told them, like there's this hag witch that they're serving, and she gave them instructions not to do anything about it because she wanted to see how it worked. And now I've added this witch to the game, and she was actually controlling the pirates, etc. But to me, that's the better of two bad options. The bad option, the worst one is just say, oh well, I forgot, and there's no justification for it. This other one is breaking the consistency of the world to maintain a certain level of consistency. Right, I lose some to gain some. But again, optimally, that would never happen.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Could I just add to that, which is I'm really glad we've come back to a point I made right at the start, which is it's the players' responsibilities to remind us who run the games that sometimes we've forgotten something that relates to their character, and I thought that was a great example. Yeah. But we are only human. When we're running a game, we're only human, and I have had situations where I've had a hyper intelligent bad guy. And I've turned around to the players and said, look, this guy understands and can factor far more than I can. So when we go forward in this, I'm going to listen to everything you do. You've got to explain up front what you're doing. And then you give me a couple of minutes to counter it, because the bad guy would have countered. He would have known what you were going to do and countered it within certain limits. And that often creates quite an interesting game where you when you're running the game, you can't be hyper intelligent, because it's one of those things. We're all limited, and it comes back to the question: what is role play? If you're role playing your character and your character is really strong, but you're not, are you actually role playing your character? And it's the same on the GM side. And there are certain times where I've had an NPC and I've been like, this NPC knows knowledge that I don't know, so I'm going to play the NPC and I'm going to put provisions in place until I understand what knowledge the NPC knows based on what the players are doing. and then I will now build my counters and do stuff like that.
Mhm.
Wouldn't help in that situation if I forgot a player's abilities, and I've done that from time to time, where a trap's been laid and a player's gone, oh, well, actually I can. I just go, fine, you do it. You know, it's you got to roll with it. You forgot it, and even if you're kind of there thinking, well, actually, if I'd known the bad guys could have, it's like, well, they weren't expecting it. It's, you know, it's one thing for and using 5e, lots of classes get face step, and face step is I'm grappled, I face step, I'm now free. So having counters to face step is actually quite common, and as a DM, I'd be thinking, oh, you know, binds that prevent teleportation. But if a player had an ability that allowed them to go ethereal, which isn't teleportation, and I'd forgotten about that, then the likelihood is the NPCs would have forgotten because it's rare. They would have protected against someone face stepping, but not against someone going ethereal and escaping that way.
I'm so sorry I had to step away. I really wanted to hear what Dean said.
I think I was agreeing with you.
Okay, I thought so. I like you, Dean. I think we're very much on the same page. We're just a different shoot of the same branch, where we don't want the same thing, but we just do it. Go about it.
We do it differently, but we're after the same. It's the same goal, and that's perfectly fine.
I generally hate this comment because to me it's just a cop-out answer, but it's a cop-out answer because it is true, and ultimately we're all just trying to have fun, right?
Yeah.
No. I'm not trying to.
No,
I'm trying to
bad.
the whole time.
No,
Crap! I didn't know.
I make sure my players are miserable by the end of the session. They never want to come back.
I'm actually serious. It's not about fun.
It's a byproduct, but I did want to say one thing, and I do want to get to a session 4, so hopefully this doesn't bring up a bunch of discussion.
Okay.
So I think what we're looking at as consistency is maybe not necessarily consistent, and let me know what y'all think about this. So if you're playing a game and you make a ruling and it works well, everyone at the table agrees that it works well, it's like, okay, we're going to go ahead with that ruling going forward. But then maybe something happens later on, a couple sessions after, and it's glaringly apparent that, oh wow, this ruling has this rules ramification that we did not realize at the time. For new people watching, don't strive to be consistent in that way. It's okay to change the ruling at that point, but I will say don't change it until after the session. Don't try to change it in the middle of the session. When these rulings are happening, it's okay for them to change and evolve as your table evolves, but don't feel like you're shackled to the first thing that comes up.
That is a very good point, Austin. When I say consistency, it's not about being consistent with the past. It's about being consistent with the agreed upon rules, whatever they happen to be. You do the rules as you agreed consistently. The past doesn't matter. If you change your rule set from day to day, as long as everyone agrees, you're good. It's about consistency of agreement, not consistency of the past. Great point.
Okay. I don't really have, I do have another follow-up, but you guys have knocked these all out of the park, either in segment 1, 2, or here in segment 3. So I guess I'm going to follow up. I know I sucked segment 4, but I want to put this out there for players that might have bad tables or game masters who might get a little too set in their ways. And this is a quick answer, but we'll start obviously with Arch because it's his segment. What is the difference between being consistent and being stubborn?
The difference, I would say it's probably intention. I have been stubborn in my life several times, and it's narrow focused. It's when your mind is small and you're thinking, this is the right way. And being consistent is you zoom out and you know why you're actually trying to be consistent. You say, here's the reason, here's the goal. I want consistent for the player's enjoyment, or for the verisimilitude of the world, or because I have another group of players in the same world, and the world has to be adjudicated the same way for them, etc. Like, here's the reason why. I think the difference between being stubborn and being consistent is reason. Is it reasonable? Are you actually doing it intentionally for a reason, or are you doing it kind of mindlessly because, like, if no one can convince you otherwise, that means you didn't have a reason, right? You can't be reasoned out of something you didn't reason yourself into. So if you can't be reasoned out of it at all, that's being stubborn. It means you didn't actually have a reason to be there in the first place.
You got to stop making me do algebra on this stream.
What?
No, just go ahead. Dean or Adam, what do you guys think?
Okay, I'll go. I pretty much agree with that. What one person may call stubborn, another person may call in different contexts. You know, they're brave or courageous, right? And so it's the reasoning behind it and the perspective.
Being consistent is whenever you make adjudications, being open to the fact you might have missed something. Being stubborn is assuming that you're always right and your players are always wrong.
Damn it, I'm stubborn.
In my opinion, it's a collaborative game. You're creating a game with your players, and there's consent on both sides. That said, yeah, I think I kind of agree with Archie. It's intent. It's, you know, if you keep making a consistent call, despite your players constantly going, look, we don't like it for these reasons, and those reasons are valid reasons, but you're just narrow-minded and you're just looking at this and going, no, we're going to stick to this because it says in the book, or that's stubborn.
Okay. Well, awesome. Any final alibis or anything that you guys want to put out there that you didn't get to say in terms of tonight's topic before we open it up to? We'll probably have time for 2 people, maybe 3 if somebody's quick to pop on in.
Now let's get some people in here.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Demanding. I love it. That's the way you talk to some folks out there. So become a legitimate channel member by hitting that join button. You can also support us after the live stream with super thanks. I won't take a drink in your name for a super thanks, though, because I'd get wasted. I know how you people are. It really helps us know that you truly like this content and want more of it. Do you think you have some panel presence like these fine gentlemen? Maybe you have more experience or something else to improve upon a panel like this because you're just that much better. Well, sign up on the GMI Discord. Link is in the description. Read the rules. Find a panel topic that interests you. Now, in segment 4, we bring you on to talk to our panelists about tonight's topic. I'll post a link to join us in just a moment. Just remember, I will try to get to everyone, but first of all, I'm going to prioritize members and super chatters, and we do have a hard cutoff here in about 13 and a half minutes. So that's just the way it is. That's how the show is set up. So let me put the URL out there. That StreamYard URL is how you can join. Don't click on it unless you intend to join. All right, I'll get the other banner. Wait, I thought that was the other banner. It doesn't want to do it. Hold on. And then we'll get to the super chats, and then we'll get some folks in here. That's not it. That should be it. Oh, I know what's wrong. I'm being a dum-dum. There you go. Gotta be smarter than the live stream. Okay. So what do we have here for some comments? Again, thank you very much, Monohan, for the $50. Hunger, the Starbarians. Max, you sure have a pretty mouth. I am now going to name you my deliverance chatter. I will not squeal like a pig, though. And my name is not Ned. But thank you for the $20, Hunger. Always appreciate seeing you. And look at that. James is on here talking crap, and you just come in and just blow right by him. For those who don't know, Hungar and James are brothers, but Hungar obviously is the superior one. Donated more money. But you know what? James does follow that up. And if I tally all of James' totals together, he might be, I think he tied him. Actually, no, he beats him because he did the membership as well. Really, the best DM advice is to go play Hyperborea. Okay. I like Hyperborea. I think it's a good D&D-esque game. I find it probably one of the best written books in terms of D&D clones out there. Like the game is perfectly formatted from beginning to end. At least the player's guide is. So absolutely love it. Game publishers should take a look at how that book is laid out and learn a thing or 3. And then for another $2, passing his brother. So now James is the best. This is a handsome panel, honestly. And I corrected him. I said, you know what? You could say sexy if you wanted, but you know, tomato, it's up to you. But there you go. For $2, this is a handsome panel. Love that. Nerd says, I think this was to Dean's comment, if I remember correctly. That's as good as any solution I've heard to role-playing someone more intelligent or charismatic than you are. There's got to be a compromise somewhere. Guys have any thoughts on that?
Sorry, I'm married.
You know, in some states, it's still... No, never mind.
The arch PG. That's funny.
And I have one more here, Starred. If there's no segment 4, it's the fault of the host. You know what? While that is true, I will never take blame. No, they were having such a good discussion during segment 2. At one point in segment 2, I was like, I got to move to segment 3, but they're having such a good discussion. I didn't want to interrupt it. It happens, you know? I have to balance out the good discussion with the, hey, we got to move on. And I think these guys have been fantastic tonight.
I enjoyed it.
Yep.
All right. Well, now, with that said, I got to make that full screen so I can see it. All right, it's time for segment 4 where you can have your say. I put it out there here. I'll put it out there one more time just in case you guys miss it. Join. There we go. I'm just going to say join. That's not a demand. That's an if you have something to say to these guys. Now listen to the rules. Listen to the rules coming up here. Before we bring anyone to talk to the panel, I need to remind you of a few things. If you don't want to get booted and possibly banned, do not break YouTube's terms of service. Also, stay on topic. Unless someone specifically super chats more time for you, 5 minutes maximum for your back and forth, so make your point quickly. No matter what, the show is a hard stop in less than 10. Second time I've cussed tonight. I gotta not do that. Less than 10 minutes. So this means we may not get to everyone. Finally, make no guarantees, but we'll try to prioritize members, super chatters, and Rumble ranters first. The other thing is don't come on here to tell me how great or horrible the show is. This isn't about me. This is about them. So make sure when you come in, your comment, question, concern is on topic and for them. So in the meantime, I'll just go while we're waiting for people to pop in. It's funny how people keep telling me, you should make it so that people can jump in. And then as soon as I do that, I get like one person. Like, well,
it's all right. We got a lot of time.
What's that?
We only have time for one person, so we're good.
Jump in, you cowards.
There, yeah. But what do you guys? Any final thoughts? Anything that you want to mention before we get into members only stream about tonight's topic, or anything left on the table?
As we leave the public section, I just want to say thank you all for watching. Thank you, Max, for hosting. Thank you, Dean. I really enjoyed meeting you and talking with you. This has been a blast. Thank you, Austin, for being here as well. I've enjoyed this immensely. I love going out on other people's channels. This is really cool.
Yep.
How would you know? Sorry, I had to scream that out.
This has been a fantastic panel. It's my second one, and I've enjoyed it just as much as the first one. It's great to talk to other creators and talk about these things and celebrate our differences by looking at what we have in common.
Awesome. All right, Nerdy Ogre, you got 5 minutes. You might be the only one tonight. So what you got, sir?
Yeah, I'm going back to the hit points discussion. I think that was
no.
yeah. The idea of the barbarian being on that 30-foot cliff and jumping because I've got the hit points, I can take it. That is the of a fighter of something of a fighter class. The barbarian or even the fighter. That would be expected. I point to the scene in one of the Avengers movies where Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and Spider-Man meet the Guardians, and Quill has the laser gun to Spider-Man's head, and Iron Man has his ion cannon to Drax's head, and Drax is like, "Go ahead and shoot him, Quill. I can take it." And everybody's like, "No, you can't." That's the mindset of the barbarian. So yes, it is game term logical for the barbarian to look and say, I can take that.
I'll jump in real quick. So going back to what I said near the beginning, where you need to pick a robust system, if you're playing a system where you are playing Avengers, I am completely on your side, Nerdy. Or Ogre, I don't know what you like to go by, but I'm completely on your side. If you're playing a system where it's like that, but you're trying to make it something else, then if that keeps happening, you should take it as a signal. It's like, wait, we need to play a different game because the system is setting up Drax, but I'm trying to play, I don't know, some other, James Bond, right? So I completely agree with that, Nerdy Ogre. If that's how it's set up, if that's the agreement of the table, then the HP number can be used to role play. Okay, that's how I'm going to role play this. Although I don't know if there's anyone who disagrees, but the way that D&D has HP is not to my liking. But I agree with you, Nerdy Ogre.
Yeah. I find it quite fascinating that we talk 5e and immediately Marvel comes up, because 5e is your superhero system. And, I'm not saying that as a bad thing. For people who love 5e and love that superhero nature, go, you do you, and that's great. I'm just going to quickly answer, because someone in the chat keeps talking about massive damage. In 5e, massive damage is damage that's half of your hit points or greater. And a barbarian that might have 300 odd hit points and only take 100 by dropping those, it's nothing. It's nothing to the barbarian. But I do agree with you. I think if I had a player role playing their barbarian like Drax, then yes, I would expect them to be at the edge of a cliff going, no, I can survive this, I'll jump, and leaping off the cliff, abandoned to any reasonable thought. And I would agree with that. But if I've got someone who's playing a wizard and the wizard's looking down and going, I've got these many hit points, I can survive the fall, and leaping, at that point you're kind of going, really? But I do agree. Yeah.
It really is
anything else?
It really is just about if these if the tone of the setting and the genre and the fiction, etc., matches the system. If there's a mismatch, there's a problem. If they're perfectly matched, you're golden. That's all.
Dean actually reminded me of one more thing. So in Guardians of the Galaxy, Drax's position is taken as a joke. So like that's something to factor in. It's that doesn't make any sense actually.
But when he
also
jumped down the gullet of that monster to attack it from the inside, for some reason it's weaker on the inside.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then also it really does depend on what the game is modeling with HP. Because if HP is your meat points, even jumping down is I can take it. If it's like a third of your HP, that hurts a lot, right? And so it's the difference between, I can take it, I can go in here and do this to save my friends, versus, I can jump down here to punch this guy. Yeah. The random move number 3.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I've had this argument about barbarians, because you get a barbarian who I forget which totem it is, but totem of the bear, I think, where they can resist all damage, and falling damage is bludgeoning damage. I actually house ruled it that falling damage is not untyped damage and cannot be resisted to get around this. But you have a barbarian who rages, leaps off the cliff. They're now taking half the falling damage. They don't need many hit points for it to become such a trivial thing to do. And remembering again, your falling damage, I think, ceilings at 10d6, 100 feet. I think so. It doesn't go above 20.
If you're talking Dungeons and Dragons, I don't know. I haven't played since 4th edition.
Yeah, but it stops at a certain point. Yeah. So you could have someone jump several miles in the sky and know they can survive the fall. And for me, you're crossing from fantasy, heroic fantasy, to superhero fantasy. Yeah. And
I mean, because I mean, even thinking system agnostic, it's like the player characters are separate than the NPC. The PCs are separate from the NPCs. The PCs aren't your average Joe Blow. They're the guys that do the impossible. They
well, that depends on the game, to be clear.
Nakatomi Tower using a fire hose as repelling gear. Even going so far as back as Rambo, where he's on the side of a cliff and he jumps off. It's like the player characters are supposed to do these impossible things and have a chance of survival. Now, don't get me wrong; they also have a chance of dying. Even if you roll 46 for damage, you could get all 6s and be left with 0 hit points. It's but still. I've always interpreted that the player characters are set apart from the NPCs.
All right. Well, real quickly, Nerdy, that's your time. So you made your point there. Go ahead and give him a quick answer, but we do have to end the show here. By the way, members don't go away, but go ahead and give him a quick answer. And Nerdy, I'm gonna boot you, but stand by to listen. Okay. Thank you. All right. What do you guys have to finish up with him on that one?
I thought he was a swell guy.
Okay.
I think we covered it. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Well, there we go. That is it for the public show tonight. Please leave a comment who you believe had the most compelling. That's right. They got me saying compelling now, and I didn't say compelling. I said compelling. I think I do that every time, too. Compelling, interesting, or novel position. Did you learn anything new that you may try at your table? Let us know in the comments. YouTube members, there is more to come, so don't go anywhere. Sincere thank you to everyone who supported the show with super chats, rumble rants, and memberships, and to all of you who took the time to join us tonight. Finally, thank you very much to tonight's panelists for their time, for their informative and, well, I wouldn't say spirited, I would say definitely informative and knowledgeable discussion. Didn't get heated tonight. We'll work on that for next time. Be sure to subscribe to their channels or check out their content through the links in the description. And with that, I look forward to doing this again next time. And I'll see you all. Members, stand by. I'll see you all in, I don't know, the future. There we go. Later.